My hands trembled as I adjusted the final arrangement of pink peonies on the dessert table. The lakeside resort's banquet room sparkled with welcome baby lily banners and rose gold balloons floating gracefully against floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the water. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Everything was perfect. The personalized party favors, the three-tiered cake with delicate sugar flowers, the champagne flutes filled with non-alcoholic rosé. 7 months pregnant with our miracle baby after years of trying, this should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, I kept touching. The manila envelope tucked beneath the gift table, the weight of its contents heavier than the baby girl kicking inside me. "Emily, you should sit down." Jessica appeared at my elbow, concern etched across her face. "You've been on your feet all morning." "I'm fine," I insisted, though the dull ache in my lower back suggested otherwise. "Nathan just texted. He's 15 minutes away with his parents." Jessica's expression darkened. "Are you sure about this? We could just cancel. Say you're not feeling well." The question hung between us as guests began filtering in. Colleagues from the art gallery where I curated Nathan's business associates, our neighbors, all bearing gifts wrapped in pastel paper and silver bows. I smiled and hugged and thanked everyone, one hand resting protectively over my belly, the other nervously checking my phone. "Everything is going according to plan," I whispered to Jessica as I watched Nathan's parents enter, his mother already, dabbing at sentimental tears. What nobody knew, what nobody could possibly imagine, was that while they celebrated new life, I was planning to detonate the comfortable existence we'd built on a foundation of lies. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been sorting through our mail when I found it. A letter from Eastern Hills Hospital addressed to Nathan, marked "Confidential, Paternity Test Results." My heart had stopped, the world tilting sideways as I stared at the unopened envelope. There had to be a mistake. Nathan and I had been trying for a baby for 3 years. Every negative test, every failed fertility treatment, every tear shed had been shared between us. When we finally conceived our daughter, Nathan had wept with joy, his hands trembling as they touched my still flat stomach. "Our miracle," he'd whispered. I set the envelope on our kitchen island, that gleaming marble surface in our meticulously renovated Victorian home in Oakwood's historic district. Everything in our life looked perfect from the outside. Successful husband running Wilson and Mercer Development, wife with a prestigious position at the city's premier art gallery, baby on the way. The American dream wrapped in a bow. I didn't open the letter, not then. Instead, I called Jessica. "There has to be an explanation," she said over coffee at the corner cafe, far from any of Nathan's usual haunts. "Maybe it's for a client? Some kind of documentation for a legal case?" But we both knew better. Jessica had seen the text messages appearing on Nathan's phone when he'd left it on our kitchen counter months ago. Messages from someone saved simply as V, discussing meeting times and hotel arrangements. Nathan had brushed it off when I confronted him. "Just a demanding investor," he'd said. "You know how this business works." I'd believed him because I wanted to believe him. "What are you going to do?" Jessica asked, her hand covering mine. "I'm going to find out who V is," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Finding Vanessa Porter wasn't difficult. Nathan's business partner, Alex, had always had a soft spot for me, especially since I'd helped his daughter secure an internship at the gallery. When I stopped by their office unannounced with homemade cookies for the team, Alex mentioned that Nathan was showing a new client the Riverside Apartments development. "That project again?" "I thought those units were all sold," I said casually, arranging cookies on a plate. "All except the penthouse. Nathan's been working closely with a particular buyer. Actually, between us, I think they might be finalizing today." I drove to Riverside Apartments with my heart in my throat. The luxury development overlooked Oakwood's Revitalized waterfront district, Nathan's pride and joy, a project that had kept him working late nights and weekends for the past year. I spotted his car immediately in the reserved parking spot marked Wilson and Mercer. Next to it was a sleek red convertible I didn't recognize. I took the elevator to the penthouse level, my pregnant belly leading the way as I stepped into the stylishly staged living area. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see them on the private terrace. Nathan and a stunning woman with cascading dark hair. She turned slightly, revealing her profile and a distinctive baby bump beneath her fitted dress. The world stopped spinning. I must have made a sound because they both turned. Nathan's face drained of color, his mouth falling open as he registered my presence. "Emily," he stammered, moving toward me while the woman, Vanessa, remained frozen on the terrace. "This isn't, you shouldn't be. Who is she, Nathan?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "A client," he said automatically, then seemed to register the futility of the lie. "Emily, please, let's discuss this at home." "I'm Vanessa," the woman said, stepping forward with surprising composure, "and I think you and I need to talk." What followed was the most surreal hour of my life. In the empty penthouse apartment, with its pristine surfaces and spectacular views, I learned that my husband had been living a double life for over a year. Vanessa, an interior designer who had worked on previous Wilson and Mercer projects, had been seeing Nathan since before our last round of fertility treatments. She was now 5 months pregnant with his child. A boy, she told me with an apologetic glance at my own pregnant form. "He told me you were separated," she said, twisting a diamond tennis bracelet around her wrist. A bracelet I recognized as one Nathan had claimed to have bought for his mother's birthday. "That you were only staying together until after some big development deal closed. For appearances." Nathan had stepped out onto the terrace, leaving us alone in a grotesque parody of female bonding. Through the glass, I could see him pacing, phone pressed to his ear. "When did you find out I exist?" I asked. 3 weeks ago. I saw his credit card statement. Charge for baby furniture delivered to your address." Vanessa's composure cracked slightly. When I confronted him, he admitted, "You were pregnant too, but swore he was going to leave, that he'd been trying to find the right time." "And the penthouse?" "He's buying it for us, for when the baby comes." She hesitated. "At least, that's what he promised." I nodded, pieces falling into place. The mysterious cash withdrawals from our joint account, the late nights, the second phone I'd once glimpsed in his car. "Are there others?" I asked. Vanessa laughed bitterly. "I asked the same thing. He swears not, but we both believed other lies, so why not that one too?" I finished. Something passed between us then. A moment of solidarity, 2 women deceived by the same man. Before Nathan returned, Vanessa slipped me her number. "Whatever you decide to do, I think we should talk again." In the car, Nathan begged. He wept. He made promises. He claimed temporary insanity and overwhelming pressure. He suggested therapy. When none of that moved me, he switched tactics, reminding me how intertwined our lives were. The house, the investments, my gallery connections through his clients. "You can't leave, Emily. Think of Lily. Think of our family." I placed both, hands on my belly, feeling my daughter kick as if in protest. This stopped being a family the moment you started another one behind my back. At home, I packed a bag and called Daniel, my brother. "I'll be there in 20, he said without hesitation when he heard my voice break. Nathan followed me from room to room as I gathered essentials. "Where will you go? What will you tell people? Be reasonable, Emily. We can work through this." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I paused at our bedroom door. "Did you get a paternity test?" His silence was answer enough. "That's how I found out, Nathan. The results came to our house." I turned away from his stricken face. Don't worry, I didn't open your mail. I respect privacy, something you might want to learn about. Daniel's spare room became my sanctuary for the next week. Nathan's calls and texts came constantly at first, then tapered as I maintained my silence. My brother, a financial advisor, listened patiently to the whole sordid story, then made one suggestion. Before you decide anything, you need to know exactly what you're dealing with. Financially, legally, everything. Which is how I found myself in Rachel Goldman's office, an attorney specializing in high-asset divorces. Her sleek downtown office projected confidence, much like Rachel herself with her sharp suit and sharper eyes. The good news, she said after I'd explained my situation, is that Michigan is an equitable distribution state. The bad news is that equitable doesn't necessarily mean equal, especially with business assets. Nathan's company? Built during your marriage, yes, but he'll argue sweat equity, prior investments, his partner's contributions. It gets messy. Rachel tapped her pen against a legal pad. What about property? Any real estate besides your primary residence? I thought about the lakeside property, 10 pristine acres Nathan had purchased last year as an investment opportunity. We'd visited it once, standing on a bluff overlooking crystal waters. For our future, he'd said, arm around my shoulders. Someday we'll build a summer home here for Lily to grow up visiting. There's a lakeside property, I said, purchased about 10 months ago. Rachel made a note. We'll need to see how that's titled, Any Other Assets or Accounts You Know About? As Rachel and I dug deeper, a troubling picture emerged. Nathan had been moving money, significant amounts, into accounts I had no access to. The property purchases, investment portfolios, even a second life insurance policy with Vanessa listed as beneficiary. He's been planning an exit strategy, Rachel concluded grimly, possibly for longer than the affair has been going on. I thought of all the nights I'd waited up, all the fertility appointments Nathan had rescheduled at the last minute, all the business trips that ran long. How much of our life together had been real? There's something else, I said, pulling out my phone to show Rachel the text conversation with Vanessa. After our meeting at the penthouse, we'd established an uneasy alliance. Nathan's been telling her that all the property is being put in her name, including the lakeside land. Rachel's eyebrows rose. Let me look into the deed records. And, in the meantime, I suggest you don't alert Nathan that you're investigating. Based on these financial movements, we need to be careful how we proceed. I returned to Daniel's, my mind racing. The baby shower was in 2 weeks, an event I'd spent months planning, invitations long since sent to over 50 guests. Jessica suggested canceling, but something in me resisted. Not yet, I told her. Rachel's looking into something. 3 days later, Rachel called. Emily, I need you to come to my office right away. There's something you should see. The document spread across Rachel's conference table told a story so calculating it took my breath away. Nathan hadn't just been having an affair or preparing to leave me. He had been systematically defrauding both Vanessa and me. The lakeside property, Rachel explained, pointing to a deed, was purchased with funds from your joint account, but he had the deed issued with a holding company as owner, Westlake Partners, LLC. I've never heard of it. It was formed last year, and guess who the sole owner is? Rachel slid another document toward me. Nathan Wilson. No other partners. Not you, not Vanessa. My hands shook as I processed this. So he's been telling her the property will be theirs, while telling me it's our family investment. Exactly. And there's more. Rachel revealed evidence of similar arrangements with the Riverside penthouse and several other properties, all purchased with commingled funds but titled to shield them from both Vanessa and me. He's been using funds from your joint accounts, Vanessa's investments with him, and possibly Wilson and Mercer corporate accounts to build a separate property portfolio. If either relationship fell apart, he'd still control everything. I felt sick. What about Alex, Nathan's business partner? Rachel's expression grew grimmer. Based on these financial records, I don't think Alex knows the extent of what Nathan's been doing with company funds. The depth of Nathan's betrayal expanded beyond romantic infidelity into something coldly calculated. He hadn't just been unfaithful, he'd been building a financial escape hatch while draining resources from everyone who trusted him. What can I do? I asked. Rachel handed me a folder. These are copies of the deeds, financial transfers, and corporate documents, legally obtained and admissible in court. She paused. How you use them is up to you, but I'd recommend filing for divorce immediately and seeking emergency injunctions to freeze the assets. I stared at the manila folder, so similar to the hospital envelope that had started this whole journey. I need to think. That night, I called Vanessa. We met at Maple Grove Park, sitting on opposite ends of a bench while children played nearby, a painful reminder of the futures we'd both envisioned. I need to show you something, I said, passing her copies of Rachel's documents. Vanessa's hands trembled as she read, her face paling. I invested nearly $300,000 with him for the penthouse. My entire inheritance from my grandfather. Her voice broke. He said it would be in my name, for our son's future. I watched a young mother push a toddler on a swing, the child's delighted, laughter carrying across the playground. He's been lying to both of us. Vanessa looked up, tears streaming down her face. What are you going to do? I touched my belly, feeling Lily kick. In that moment, something hardened in me, not just anger or hurt, but resolve. Nathan had betrayed not just me but our daughter's future, and I wouldn't let him walk away with everything while we picked up the pieces. The baby shower is next Saturday, I said slowly. Everyone will be there, his parents, his business associates, our friends. Including me, Vanessa said quietly. He invited me last week, said it would be the perfect opportunity to, accidentally, meet, to start normalizing things before he leaves you. The audacity of it should have shocked me, but somehow it didn't. This was who Nathan truly was. A man so convinced of his own cleverness that he thought he could orchestrate an introduction between his wife and Mistress at his own baby shower. Come, I said, surprising myself. But bring these. I handed her a set of documents Rachel had prepared. For the first time since we'd met, Vanessa smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face. You're not what I expected, Emily Wilson. Neither are you, Vanessa Porter. The week leading up to the shower passed in a blur of preparations, both for the event itself and for what would follow. I kept up appearances, responding politely but distantly to Nathan's texts, agreeing when he suggested we put aside our issues for the shower. For Lily, he said, as if invoking our daughter's name could erase his actions. I moved back home temporarily, sleeping in the guest room, passing Nathan in hallways like a ghost. Each night, I reviewed the contents of the manila envelope with Jessica or Daniel, ensuring I understood every detail of Nathan's financial shell game. The morning of the shower dawned bright and clear, autumn sunlight sparkling off the lake, where guests would soon gather to celebrate a baby whose father had already betrayed her. I arrived early to oversee final arrangements, the manila envelope tucked safely in my tote bag. Jessica came with me, silently supportive as I directed caterers and arranged gift tables with mechanical precision. Are you sure about this? She asked as guests began to arrive. We could still... I'm sure, I said, watching Nathan's car pull into the resort's circular drive. He emerged looking confident in a blue button-down that matched the shower's color scheme, smiling and shaking hands as if he hadn't systematically betrayed everyone who loved him. The party proceeded according to plan. Guests mingled, enjoying mimosas and brunch selections. Nathan played the role of doting husband and father-to-be perfectly, his hand occasionally resting possessively on my lower back as we greeted friends and family. You look beautiful, he whispered at one point, and I had to suppress a shudder. I kept watching the door, checking my phone. Vanessa had texted earlier, "On my way. Ready when you are." Just as Nathan's mother was organizing everyone for a group photo, it happened. Vanessa entered, a vision in a fitted emerald dress that highlighted her own pregnancy. The room didn't exactly fall silent. Most guests had no idea who she was. But Nathan froze, champagne glass halfway to his lips. His mother noticed first. "Nathan, who's that young woman? She looks familiar." Before he could answer, I stepped forward. "Everyone, I'd like to introduce Vanessa Porter. She's been working closely with Nathan this past year." Confusion rippled through the crowd. Nathan moved toward me, panic in his eyes. "Emily, what are you doing?" "Just making introductions," I said, my voice carrying across the now quieting room. "Vanessa is expecting a baby boy in about 4 months. Nathan's baby boy, to be specific." The silence that followed was absolute. Nathan's mother gasped, his father's face darkened, and Alex Mercer set down his drink with deliberate care, his expression morphing from surprise to suspicion. "Emily!" Nathan hissed, grabbing my arm. "Have you lost your mind? This is our baby shower." "Yes, it is," I agreed, pulling away from him. "A celebration of new life and new beginnings. Speaking of which," I reached for my tote bag and withdrew. The manila envelope, my hands steady as I removed the lakeside property deed and placed it on the gift table. I thought this would be the appropriate time to give Lily her gift, the deed to the lakeside property you purchased for our family. Except according to public records, it's not in our names at all, is it? It's owned by your shell company. Nathan's face drained of color. "This isn't the place. Or perhaps," I continued, pulling out more documents, "we should discuss the Riverside penthouse. The one you're buying for Vanessa and your son using our joint funds and her inheritance? Except that's not quite right either, since Westlake Partners, meaning you alone, would be the actual owner." Alex stepped forward, his expression thunderous. "Nathan, what is she talking about?" Whispers erupted around the room. Nathan's desperate gaze darted between me, Vanessa, and the growing pile of evidence on the table. "It's a misunderstanding," he began, but I wasn't finished. "And, Alex, you might be particularly interested in these." I placed the financial records Rachel had uncovered on the table. Company funds being diverted to purchase properties under Nathan's private LLC. Over $1.2 million so far. The room erupted. Nathan's mother began crying. His father looked apoplectic, and business associates clustered around the documents, expressions ranging from shock to fury. Nathan lunged for the papers, but Alex was faster, snatching them up with a look of cold fury. "Is this true, Nathan?" "Alex, I can explain. It's a temporary arrangement for tax purposes." "Tax evasion too? Wonderful." I gestured to Vanessa, who stepped forward with her own envelope. Vanessa has graciously brought copies of all her investment records, $300,000 transferred to accounts under your control, with promised ownership that never materialized. Nathan's careful composure shattered completely. "You stupid bitch," he snarled, all pretense abandoned. "You have no idea what you've done." "Actually, I do." I removed my final document, a petition for divorce already filed with the court. "I've frozen our joint assets, notified the State Bar Association about potential financial improprieties, and as of yesterday, removed myself as guarantor on all Wilson and Mercer development loans. My attorney has already spoken with the district attorney about potential fraud charges." The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan stood alone in the center of the room, abandoned by his carefully cultivated image, the true nature of his character exposed for all to see. "You would ruin everything?" he asked, his voice small. "Our family." "You ruined it," I said simply. "I'm just making sure you don't walk away with the pieces." I turned to the stunned guests, my hand resting protectively over my belly. I apologize for the dramatic turn of events. Please enjoy the rest of the refreshments. Lily and I appreciate your support during this challenging time. Then, with dignity I didn't know I possessed, I walked out of the banquet room, past the rose gold balloons and pink peonies into the crisp autumn air. Jessica followed, slipping her arm through mine as we made our way to the lakefront. Behind us, I could hear raised voices. Alex demanding answers. Nathan's father shouting, his mother weeping. None of it touched me. I felt lighter than I had. In months, unburdened by lies. "What now?" Jessica asked, as we stood watching sunlight dance across water that had almost been Lily's inheritance. I took a deep breath of clean air. "Now we rebuild, on truth this time." That night, I slept at Daniel's apartment again. My phone silenced as notifications poured in from shocked party guests and concerned friends. Vanessa had texted once, "Thank you for today. Let me know when you're ready to talk next steps." I hadn't replied. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation had faded, leaving me bone-tired and strangely hollow. "You were incredible," Daniel said, setting a cup of herbal tea beside the couch where I'd curled up. "Like watching a courtroom drama, except you were the star." I managed a weak smile. "Doesn't feel like a victory, just feels real," he supplied, "after months of living in a fiction." I nodded, absently stroking my belly. Lily had been unusually active since the showdown, as if she too sensed the seismic shift in our world. My phone vibrated again, Nathan's face appearing on the screen for the 5th time in an hour. "You should probably talk to him eventually," Daniel said, cautiously. "But it doesn't have to be tonight." "Or tomorrow," I added. "Or maybe ever." Daniel chuckled. "Fair enough. Get some rest, Em. The hard part's over." But as I drifted into uneasy sleep, I knew better. The hard part was just beginning. Alex Mercer was waiting outside the art gallery when I arrived for work Monday morning. His normally immaculate appearance showing signs of strain, unshaven face, rumpled shirt, dark circles under his eyes. "Emily," he said, stepping forward as I approached. "Got a minute?" I glanced at my watch. "The gallery opens in 20. Can we make it quick?" He followed me inside, waiting silently as I disarmed the security system and turned on lights. The current exhibition, contemporary glass sculptures reflecting fractured light across the walls, seemed ironically appropriate for our conversation. "Nathan's gone," Alex said bluntly when I finally faced him. "Cleaned out his office yesterday. While I was meeting with our attorneys, left his keys and company credit cards on his desk." I absorbed this with less shock than I might have expected. The company funds he diverted, at least $1.7 million that we've identified so far. Alex ran a hand through his hair. "Emily, I swear I had no idea. We've been friends since college, partners for 8 years. I never thought." "Neither did I," I said softly. "And I slept beside him every night." Alex nodded, understanding passing between us. "The DA wants to speak with you. And our investors are concerned, to put it mildly. The Harrington project might fall through completely." The Harrington was Wilson and Mercer's most ambitious development yet, a mixed-use property that had been years in the planning. Nathan had been particularly proud of securing the historic building downtown. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "This isn't what I wanted." "I know." Alex hesitated. "If you hear from him, you'll be my first call," I promised, though we both knew it was unlikely. Nathan hadn't survived this long by facing consequences head-on. After Alex left, I moved through the gallery on autopilot, preparing for the day's visitors. My assistant Kelly arrived, full of questions about my absence the previous week, which I deflected with vague mentions of pregnancy complications. The truth would spread soon enough without my help. By noon, my inbox contained 3 interview requests from local journalists, 6 voicemails from Nathan's relatives, and an email from Rachel Goldman requesting an urgent meeting. I ignored them all, focusing instead on a visiting school group, finding solace in explaining the delicate glasswork to wide-eyed fourth graders. "Ms. Wilson?" One of the children tugged at my sleeve after the formal tour ended. "How do they make the glass look like it's breaking but still stay strong?" I knelt carefully, my pregnant belly making the movement awkward. That's the artist's special talent, making something that seems fragile actually be incredibly resilient. Sometimes what looks broken is just transforming into a different kind of beautiful. The girl nodded sagely. "Like a butterfly coming out of a cocoon?" "Exactly like that," I said, surprising myself with a genuine smile. The metaphor stayed with me as I closed the gallery that evening and made my way to Rachel's office for our scheduled meeting. Transformation through necessary breaking. Resilience disguised as fragility. Rachel wasn't alone. A serious-looking woman in a charcoal pantsuit stood as I entered the conference room. "Emily, this is Detective Sandra Reyes," Rachel introduced. "Us." She's with the Financial Crimes Unit. Over the next 2 hours, I recounted everything, from finding the paternity test letter to discovering Nathan's shell companies. Detective Reyes took meticulous notes, occasionally asking for clarifications on dates or specific conversations. "Based on what we've uncovered so far," she said when I finished, "this goes beyond simple fraud. Mr. Wilson appears to have been running a sophisticated investment scheme using his legitimate business as cover." "What does that mean exactly?" I asked. Detective Reyes exchanged glances with Rachel. "It means we're looking at potential mail fraud, wire fraud, and securities violations. Federal charges, Mrs. Wilson." The gravity of this settled over me. Nathan hadn't just betrayed our marriage. He'd potentially committed crimes that could result in years of imprisonment. "There's something else," Rachel said gently. "We've been trying to trace the full extent of the financial network, and we found something concerning." She slid a document. Across the table, bank statements from an account I'd never seen before, showing regular deposits of exactly $9,150 every 2 weeks, dating back nearly 3 years. "The deposits are structured to stay just under the $10,000 reporting threshold," Detective Reyes explained. "It's a classic money laundering technique." I shook my head, overwhelmed. "I don't understand. Where was this money coming from?" "That's what we need to find out," Rachel said. "But Emily, your name is on this account." The room seemed to tilt. "That's impossible. Your signature is on the account opening documents," Detective Reyes said, her tone careful but firm. "We'd like to compare it with known samples of your signature." With shaking hands, I signed my name on the blank sheet Rachel provided. Even to my untrained eye, the differences between my actual signature and the one on the bank documents were obvious. "He forged it," I whispered. "Used my identity without my knowledge." Detective Reyes nodded, relief evident in her expression. "That's what we suspected, but we needed to be certain. Mrs. Wilson, I won't sugarcoat this. Your husband has placed you in a potentially precarious legal position. Even if you weren't aware, funds from potentially criminal activities have been passing through an account bearing your name." "What does that mean for me?" I placed a protective hand over my belly. "For my daughter?" "It means," Rachel interjected, firmly, "that we need to be proactive. Full cooperation with the investigation, complete financial transparency, and possibly applying for spousal immunity." "Immunity," I repeated hollowly. "From crimes I didn't commit." "Welcome to the wonderful world of financial fraud investigations," Detective Reyes said with grim humor. "Innocent spouses often get caught in the crossfire." As they outlined next steps, affidavits to sign, accounts to freeze, interviews with federal investigators, a creeping dread settled over me. Nathan hadn't just disappeared. He'd left me holding the bag, potentially legally implicated in his schemes. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk about Nathan. Meet me at Maple Grove Park tomorrow noon. Come alone. Alex M. I showed the message to Detective Reyes, who frowned. Mr. Mercer contacted you directly this morning, correct? Why would he use an unknown number now? He wouldn't, I realized. This isn't from Alex. Rachel's eyes widened. You think it's Nathan? It's his phrasing, his directness. I stared at the message. And he knows I trust Alex. Detective Reyes took my phone, quickly photographing the message. Do not respond, and do not go to that meeting. If Nathan Wilson is attempting contact, we need to handle this carefully. But later that night, as I lay in Daniel's guest bed listening to the soft hum of the air purifier, a plan began forming in my mind. Nathan was reaching out, which meant he was still in Oakwood. And if he was still here, he was retrievable, along with whatever evidence he might have of his larger schemes. The next morning, I called Jessica instead of Rachel or Detective Reyes. I need a favor, I said without preamble. A big one. 2 hours later, I watched from Daniel's car parked across from Maple Grove Park as Jessica sat on a bench near the playground, wearing my distinctive red maternity coat and oversized sunglasses. From a distance, her long blonde hair and similar build made her a convincing double, especially to someone expecting to see me. Detective Reyes and 2 plainclothes officers positioned themselves strategically around the park's perimeter. We'd compromised. I wouldn't meet Nathan, but I'd help them set up surveillance. Movement at the east entrance. Detective Reyes's voice came through the phone pressed to my ear. Male, approximately 6 feet, baseball cap and sunglasses. My heart hammered against my ribs as I caught sight of him. Nathan, my husband of 6 years, now skulking through a public park in a poor attempt at disguise. Even from a distance, I could read the tension in his shoulders, the furtive way he scanned the area before approaching Jessica. The moment he realized his mistake was visible even from my vantage point. The abrupt stop, the step backward, the quick pivot as he turned to flee. The officers moved with impressive coordination, converging on him from 3 directions. Within seconds, Nathan was face down on the path, hands being cuffed behind his back. Relief and grief tangled in my chest as I watched them lead him to an unmarked police car. The father of my child, the man I'd built a life with, now a fugitive, apprehended in a public park. My phone rang. Detective Reyes. We've got him. Illegal passport in his possession, along with nearly $40,000 in cash. Was he planning to run? The question seemed redundant even as I asked it. Flight to Cancun booked for tonight, connecting to destinations unknown. You did good, Mrs. Wilson. We'll be in touch. I sat in Daniel's car long after they'd gone, watching mothers push strollers and children climb jungle gyms in the autumn sunshine, mundane scenes of normalcy that now seemed to belong to another lifetime. Jessica approached, sliding into the passenger seat and removing my coat and sunglasses. He didn't even say anything when he realized I wasn't you. Just this look of, I don't know, betrayal, almost. Ironic, huh? Did they find anything else on him? A phone? Documents? Jessica shook her head. Nothing they mentioned. Why? I didn't answer immediately, my mind racing. Nathan wouldn't have approached without a plan, without leverage of some kind. The Nathan I knew, or thought I knew, always held cards in reserve. We need to go to the house, I said suddenly. Right now. Your house? Emily, is that safe? What if... Nathan's in custody, I reminded her, starting. The car. And I have a hunch. Our Victorian home looked exactly as I'd left it a week ago, unnervingly normal from the outside, with mums blooming in the porch planters and mail neatly stacked in the slot. I used my key with strange hesitation, as if I were the intruder, rather than the legal owner. What are we looking for? Jessica asked as we entered, her voice automatically dropping to a whisper in the silent house. I'm not sure exactly, I admitted. But Nathan never does anything without a backup plan. If he was desperate enough to try meeting me, he must have something valuable he needs, or needs to destroy. We moved through the house methodically, checking Nathan's home office first. The space showed signs of hasty searching, desk drawers, left partially open, files disorganized. Nathan's laptop was gone, but that was expected. His passport drawer is empty, I noted, examining the false bottom Nathan thought I didn't know about in his desk. But there's an impression here. Something else was kept with it. Another passport? Cash? Jessica suggested. I shook my head. Something flat and rectangular. About this big. I traced dimensions roughly the size of an external hard drive. Moving to our bedroom, I found more subtle signs of disturbance. The painting behind which our safe was hidden hung slightly askew. The safe itself was unlocked and empty, cleared of the jewelry and documents we'd stored there. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A faint scuff mark on the hardwood near Nathan's side of the bed. Kneeling awkwardly, I examined the baseboard more closely, noticing a nearly invisible seam. Jessica, hand me that letter opener from the desk. With careful pressure, I pried open what turned out to be a small hidden compartment built into the baseboard itself, the kind of modification that would have been easy to implement during our extensive home renovations 2 years prior. Inside lay a slim external hard drive, exactly the size of the impression in the passport drawer. Bingo, Jessica breathed. Should we call Detective Reyes? I hesitated, turning the device over in my hands. Yes. But first, I want to see what's on it. In Nathan's office, I connected the drive to my personal laptop. It was password protected, of course, but Nathan had a pattern, significant dates with personal meaning to him. Try your anniversary, Jessica suggested. I shook my head. Too obvious. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing a string of numbers. The date Nathan's father had declared bankruptcy 20 years ago, an event that had shaped Nathan's obsession with financial security. The drive unlocked, revealing dozens of folders with innocuous names like tax planning and estate documents. But as I opened them, the true nature of the contents became clear. Detailed records of financial transactions, shell companies, and offshore accounts far more extensive than what Rachel and Detective Reyes had uncovered. Emily, Jessica said quietly, pointing to a folder labeled simply, Contingencies. Inside were subfolders with familiar names, mine, Vanessa's, Alex's, and several of Nathan's major investors. My folder contained something that made my blood run cold. Doctored photographs and fabricated text messages designed to implicate me in Nathan's schemes, carefully backdated to make it appear I'd been a willing participant all along. He was planning to throw you under the bus, Jessica whispered. Make you the scapegoat if things went south. Vanessa's folder contained similar setups, along with recorded phone conversations edited to make her sound like a co-conspirator. Alex's held fabricated evidence suggesting he'd masterminded the entire fraud operation with Nathan as an unwitting partner. This is methodical, I said, nausea rising in my throat. Calculated. It's sociopathic, Jessica corrected. Emily, we need to call Detective Reyes right now. This changes everything. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, but before I could dial, a new message appeared, from Vanessa. Nathan made bail. His parents posted it. $500,000. He's out. The implications hit like a physical blow. Nathan was free, likely desperate, and now knew I'd helped set him up. And I was holding the evidence he'd come back to Oakwood to retrieve. We need to go, I said, quickly disconnecting the hard drive. Now. Jessica didn't argue, helping me gather my things as we hurried toward the front door. But as we reached the foyer, headlights swept across the front windows, a car pulling into our driveway. Back door, I hissed, tugging Jessica toward the kitchen. But before we could reach it, The distinctive sound of a key in the lock froze us in place. The front door swung open to reveal not Nathan, but his mother, Patricia Wilson. Her elegant features were drawn with stress, her normally perfect appearance showing signs of haste. "Emily," she said, clearly startled to find us there. "I thought Nathan said you were staying with your brother." "Mrs. Wilson," I acknowledged stiffly, instinctively moving the hard drive behind my back. "I came to collect some things." Patricia's gaze darted around the foyer, not quite meeting my eyes. "Of course. That makes sense." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Patricia had always been polite but distant, our relationship cordial rather than close. Now, with her son arrested and my pregnancy advancing, the gulf seemed unbridgeable. "You posted his bail," I said finally. It wasn't a question. "He's my son." Her chin lifted slightly. "Whatever he's done, he deserves a chance to explain himself." "Explain himself?" Jessica repeated incredulously. "He stole money, lied to everyone, got another woman pregnant, and was about to flee the country. What explanation could possibly justify that?" Patricia flinched but held her ground. "You don't understand. Nathan has been under tremendous pressure. His father and we've always expected excellence, perhaps too much so." "Don't," I said, my voice sharper than intended. "Don't make excuses for him. Not to me." Something in my tone seemed to penetrate Patricia's defensive posture. For the first time, she really looked at me, not as Nathan's wife or the mother of her grandchild, but as a woman betrayed. "Where is he now?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I don't know," she admitted. "He took his father's car after we posted bail. Said he had loose ends to tie up." Loose ends, like retrieving the hard drive currently clutched in my sweating palm. "Mrs. Wilson," I said carefully, "Nathan isn't just in trouble for infidelity or even simple fraud. The police believe he's been involved in systematic financial crimes, money laundering, securities fraud, using my identity without my knowledge." Patricia's perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat. "That's absurd. Nathan would never—" "He did," I cut her off. "And I have proof." I held up the hard drive, explaining briefly what we'd found. With each revelation, Patricia seemed to age before my eyes, the carefully maintained facade of the Wilson family matriarch crumbling. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked finally. "Because Nathan is coming back here," I said. "He needs this drive, and he knows I found it. I'm asking you, no, I'm begging you, help me protect myself and my daughter. If you've ever felt anything for this baby, your grandchild, please." Patricia closed her eyes briefly, shoulders sagging with a weight I couldn't fully comprehend. When she looked at me again, something had shifted in her expression. "My car is in the driveway," she said quietly. "Take it. Nathan will recognize his father's vehicle if he comes here, but not mine. Go somewhere safe." Relief washed through me. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," Patricia said, her voice thick with emotion. "Just promise me something. When all this is over, when Lily is born, don't tell her that her grandmother stood by and did nothing when it mattered." The promise hung between us, a fragile thread of connection across the chasm of Nathan's betrayal. "I won't," I said simply. As Jessica and I hurried to Patricia's luxury sedan, my phone buzzed with another text from Vanessa. "Nathan just called. Me. Asking about a hard drive. Says you have it and he needs it back. Be careful." "Where to?" Jessica asked as we pulled away from the house. I considered our options. Daniel's apartment would be the first place Nathan would look. The gallery was too public. A hotel could be traced through credit cards. Rachel's office, I decided. It's Saturday. The building will be mostly empty but secure. And she'll know what to do with this. I held up the hard drive. As we navigated through Oakwood's tree-lined streets, autumn leaves swirling in our diced wake, I found myself thinking about Patricia's face when I'd told her the extent of Nathan's crimes. The shock had been genuine, but beneath it, I'd glimpsed something else. Not surprise, exactly, more like confirmation of a fear long suppressed. She knew, I said aloud. Not the specifics, but she knew something wasn't right with him. All this time. Jessica glanced at me. What makes you say that? The way she looked when I showed her the drive, like she was seeing the final piece of a puzzle she'd been avoiding completing. I pressed a hand to my belly, feeling Lily's reassuring movements. I wonder how long she's been making excuses for him, covering, pretending. Family dynamics are complicated, Jessica said carefully. Sometimes love makes us complicit in ways we don't even recognize. The truth of that settled heavily between us as we pulled into the underground parking garage of the downtown office building housing Rachel's law firm. The weekend security guard recognized me from previous visits, nodding us through with minimal questions. In the elevator, I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. The baby shower had been just 6 days ago, though it felt like years had passed since then. 6 days since my life had exploded in public, since I'd stood before friends and family and exposed Nathan's duplicity. Now here I was, in possession of evidence that could send him to prison for decades, fleeing my own home with his mother's. Help! You need to rest, Jessica said, concern evident in her voice. This stress can't be good for the baby. I nodded, too tired to argue. After we get this to Rachel, then I'll rest. But as the elevator doors opened on Rachel's floor, we were met with an unexpected sight. Rachel herself, standing in the hallway with Detective Reyes and 2 uniformed officers. Emily, Rachel said, clearly surprised. We were just about to call you. There's been a development. Detective Reyes stepped forward, her expression grave. Nathan Wilson was just found unconscious in his vehicle behind the Golden Bridge Country Club. Apparent drug overdose. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me, Jessica's arm quickly circling my waist for support. Is he? I couldn't finish the question. He's alive, Detective Reyes assured me. But in critical condition. The preliminary assessment suggests a deliberate overdose. Attempted suicide. The words remained unspoken, but hung in the air between us. We need to talk, I said, indicating the hard drive still clutched in my hand. I found what he was looking for. As Rachel ushered us into her office, I caught sight of my reflection in the glass door. Pale face, shadows under my eyes, one hand protectively curved around my pregnant belly. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me, transformed by betrayal and revelation into someone harder, more cautious, but perhaps also stronger than I'd ever imagined I could be. In Rachel's spacious corner office, I explained everything, finding the hidden compartment, discovering the hard drive, the damning evidence against Nathan, but also the fabricated contingency files designed to implicate others if he were caught. This changes the investigation significantly, Detective Reyes said, examining the drive now connected to Rachel's computer. These records provide the missing links we needed to trace the full extent of his operations. What about the files? He created to frame Emily and the others? Jessica asked. Clearly fabricated, Rachel assured us. No prosecutor would give them credence, especially now that we've found them in this context. If anything, they strengthen the case against Nathan by demonstrating consciousness of guilt and premeditation. Detective Reyes nodded in agreement. These records are exactly what we needed. Mrs. Wilson, you've done everything right. The praise felt hollow as I thought of Nathan lying in a hospital bed, having tried to end his life rather than face the consequences of his actions. Despite everything, despite the depth of his betrayal and the calculated nature of his crimes, I couldn't suppress a flicker of the love we had once shared. What happens now? I asked quietly. Rachel and Detective Reyes exchanged glances. Now, Rachel said gently, We focus on protecting you and your baby. Nathan's medical condition complicates the immediate legal proceedings, but it doesn't change the evidence or the charges he's facing. And Vanessa? Alex? The others he tried to implicate? We'll contact them, Detective Reyes assured me. Make sure they understand the situation. A knock at the door interrupted us. Another officer with an update from the hospital. Detective Reyes stepped outside to speak with him, returning moments later with a carefully neutral expression. Nathan is conscious, she informed us. And asking to speak with you, Emily. The request hung in the air, unexpected and unsettling. After everything, the affair, the fraud, the attempted escape, the suicide attempt, Nathan still believed he had the right to summon me to his side. You don't have to go, Jessica said immediately. You don't owe him anything. I know, I said softly, my hand moving absently over my belly where Lily shifted restlessly. But I need to hear what he has to say. For closure, if nothing else. Rachel frowned. If you decide to see him, you shouldn't go alone. And you should know that anything he says to you could potentially be used in court later. I'll go with her, Detective Reyes offered unexpectedly. We can make it an official interview. That way, anything he says is on record, and Emily has protection. I nodded, suddenly certain this was the right course. Yes, I want to hear whatever he has to say, but on my terms, not his. As we prepared to leave for the hospital, I found myself thinking about the nursery waiting at home. Walls painted a soft mint green, white crib assembled by Nathan's own hands, stuffed animals arranged on shelves. A room prepared with love, or at least the appearance of it, for a child whose world had changed before she even entered it. We'll get through this, Jessica whispered, hugging me goodbye in the lobby. You and Lily both. I managed a smile, drawing strength from her. Certainty. I know we will. One step at a time. Outside, autumn light cast long shadows across the city as Detective Reyes and I walked to her unmarked car. I paused, taking a deep breath of crisp air, one hand supporting my lower back as Lily shifted within me. Ready? Detective Reyes asked, holding the car door. I nodded, gathering my courage for one final confrontation with the man who had nearly destroyed everything I loved. Ready. Eastern Hills Hospital felt like a maze of sterile corridors and hushed conversations. The antiseptic smell triggering, memories of fertility treatments, and the early ultrasounds where Nathan and I had first glimpsed Lily. Detective Reyes walked beside me, her steady presence grounding me as we followed a nurse toward the secure wing where Nathan was being held under police supervision. He's stabilized, the nurse explained in clipped tones, but still under observation. 20 minutes, maximum. I understand, I said, gathering my resolve as we approached the room. Two uniformed officers stood outside, nodding at Detective Reyes as we arrived. One of them opened the door, revealing a standard hospital room transformed by security protocols, window blinds closed, medical equipment beeping steadily, and Nathan, looking smaller somehow in the hospital bed, his wrists secured to the rails, with padded restraints. He turned immediately at our entrance, his eyes, those eyes I'd once thought I could read so well, lighting with an emotion I couldn't quite name when he saw me. Emily, he said, his voice hoarse. You came. Detective. Reyes positioned herself near the door, notepad ready. Mr. Wilson, as we discussed, this conversation is being recorded. You've waived your right to have your attorney present. Nathan nodded impatiently, his gaze never leaving mine. I needed to see you. To explain. I remained standing at the foot of his bed, one hand instinctively cradling my belly. Explain what, Nathan? The fraud? The affair? The second family? Or the elaborate plans to frame me for your crimes? A flicker of surprise crossed his face at the last question. You found the drive. In the baseboard compartment. You really thought I wouldn't notice? He smiled faintly, almost proudly. You always were more observant than I gave you credit for. Stop it, I said sharply. Don't act like this is some game of wits. You stole from me, from Alex, from everyone who trusted you. You got another woman pregnant while I was undergoing fertility treatments. You were prepared to let me take the fall for your crimes. Nathan's smile faded. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Which part? Getting caught? Any of it? He shifted against the restraints, wincing slightly. The investments were legitimate at first, high risk but legal. Then the Westland project collapsed, and I was overextended. I needed to cover losses, just temporarily. So you stole from our accounts. He had the decency to look ashamed. I was going to replace it, every penny. But then one cover required another, and another. The shell companies were supposed to be tax shelters, not what they became. And Vanessa? Was she just another asset to manipulate? Nathan looked away. It wasn't planned. She was intelligent, ambitious, understood the business in ways you never cared to. The casual cruelty of his phrasing stung. So, this is my fault? I didn't care enough about your business, so naturally you had to sleep with your interior designer? That's not what I meant. He sighed, suddenly looking exhausted. None of this is your fault, Emily. I know that. That's why I asked to see you, to tell you I'm sorry. For everything. The apology, so inadequate measured against his actions, ignited a fresh wave of anger within me. Sorry doesn't rebuild the life you shattered. Sorry doesn't erase the lies or the pain or the humiliation. Sorry doesn't help Alex save the company or restore Vanessa's inheritance. No, he agreed quietly. It doesn't. We fell silent. The only sounds the steady beep of monitoring equipment and Detective Reyes's pen scratching against paper. Why did you do it, Nathan? I finally asked, the question that had haunted me since the moment Sophie appeared on my doorstep. Not the financial. Fraud, I understand desperate people make terrible choices. But us, Lily, the baby shower charade. Why maintain the fiction of our perfect life if you were building another one on the side? Nathan's eyes met mine, and I glimpsed something raw and honest there, perhaps for the first time. Because I couldn't give up either life. Our home, our history, the stability and respect we'd built. And then the excitement of something new, someone who didn't know all my weaknesses and failures. So you just decided to have both? To live two separate lives? I convinced myself it was temporary, that eventually I'd figure out a solution that wouldn't hurt anyone. I laughed bitterly. That's not how betrayal works, Nathan. Someone always gets hurt? I know that now, he said softly. Detective Reyes cleared her throat. Mr. Wilson, I need to ask specifically about the financial records on the hard drive. Did you falsify evidence against Mrs. Wilson, Mr. Mercer, and Ms. Porter? Nathan hesitated, then nodded. Yes, the contingency files were insurance, in case I needed leverage. And the offshore accounts? The structured deposits under Mrs. Wilson's forged signature? Another nod. All me. Emily had no knowledge or involvement. The admission should have brought relief, but I felt only a profound emptiness. This man, this stranger in a hospital bed, had been prepared to destroy my life to save his own, had nearly succeeded. I have a question, I said, stepping closer to the bed. The lakeside property. Was any of that real? Our future home for Lily? Or was that just another asset in your shell game? Nathan's expression softened. That was real, Emily. I bought it for us, for our family. It's the one thing I never lied about. The irony wasn't lost on me, the one truth buried under an avalanche of deception. A beautiful property for a family that no longer existed. Detective, Reyes told me you tried to end your life, I said quietly. Why? Was it being caught, or something else? Nathan looked away, shame evident in the slump of his shoulders. When they arrested me at the park, I knew it was over. Everything I'd built, everyone I'd tried to be, collapsed. I couldn't face it. Couldn't face you or my parents or our friends knowing what I'd done. So you took the coward's way out. His eyes snapped back to mine, wounded. Is that what you think? What else should I think? You've run from every consequence, every responsibility. When things got hard financially, you turned to fraud instead of honesty. When our marriage became difficult during fertility treatments, you found someone else instead of working through it with me. When you were caught, you tried to flee the country. And when that failed, you tried to escape through death. My voice broke on the last word, unexpected tears blurring my vision. Do you have any idea what that would have done to Lily? To grow up knowing her father chose to leave her rather than face his mistakes? Nathan's own eyes glistened. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was desperate. You've been desperate for a long time, I said softly, and I never saw it. Never recognized how far you'd go to maintain appearances. Detective Reyes stepped forward. Mrs. Wilson, we should wrap this up soon. I nodded, suddenly exhausted by the emotional toll of the conversation, but Nathan leaned forward, straining, against his restraints. Emily, wait. There's something else you need to know. His voice had gained urgency. The drive you found, it doesn't just implicate me. There are other people involved, powerful people, investors who knew exactly what they were funding. If this goes public, they'll come after you. Detective Reyes moved closer. Are you saying there are others involved in the fraud scheme? Nathan ignored her, eyes fixed on mine. Check folder H prime. The password is Lily's due date. When you see what's there, you'll understand why I'm telling you this. Be careful. Who you trust. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Time's up. I hesitated, torn between dismissing Nathan's warning as another manipulation and the genuine fear I'd glimpsed in his eyes. Emily, he said softly as I turned to leave. For what it's worth, I did love you. Still do. That part wasn't a lie. I paused at the doorway, not looking back. The problem, Nathan, is that I'll never know which parts were real and which were performance. And that's entirely on you. Outside in the corridor, Detective Reyes studied me with concern. Are you all right? No, I admitted, but I will be. What do you make of his warning about other people being involved? I considered the question as we walked toward the elevator. Nathan's always been strategic. He wouldn't give us that information without a reason. Trying to cut a deal, possibly. Information in exchange for leniency. Maybe, I conceded. Or maybe he's genuinely worried about blowback. Either way, we should look at whatever's in that folder. Detective Reyes nodded. I'll arrange for a forensic analysis of the entire drive. If there are bigger players involved, we need to identify them. As we stepped into the elevator, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Can we meet? Important development with the penthouse situation. I showed Detective Reyes the message. Do you think it's safe for me to see her? With proper precautions, yes. If Nathan's claims about other investors are true, Ms. Porter might have relevant information. We arranged to meet Vanessa at a small cafe near the police station, neutral territory where Detective Reyes could monitor from a distance. The autumn. Afternoon had turned chilly, leaves skittering across the sidewalk as I made my way inside. Vanessa was already seated in a corner booth, her pregnant silhouette unmistakable even under a loose sweater. She rose awkwardly as I approached, the gesture somewhere between a greeting and deference. Thank you for coming, she said, settling back into her seat. I wasn't sure you would. Seems we're in this together whether we like it or not. Replied, ordering herbal tea from the hovering waitress. Vanessa nodded, hands wrapped around her own mug. I went to the penthouse today. The realtor called. Apparently the pending sale has been flagged by the FBI. When I got there, someone had already been through the place. Drawers emptied, walls checked for hiding places. I thought of the baseboard compartment in our bedroom. Looking for the hard drive, probably. That's what I figured. But here's the strange part. The realtor mentioned that another interested buyer had been by yesterday. James Harrington. The name triggered immediate recognition. Of Harrington Development? Alex's biggest investor? The same. He told the realtor he'd always been interested in the property and wanted to make an offer now that it was back on the market. I frowned, connecting dots. That's odd. Harrington's development is on the other side of town. Why would he suddenly be interested in a single penthouse here? Exactly, Vanessa said, leaning forward. So I called someone I know who works at his company. James Harrington has been pushing hard to get control of the Riverside Apartments project for months. Nathan kept blocking it. The implication hung between us, a troubling new dimension to consider. You think Harrington is one of the investors Nathan warned me about? Vanessa's expression grew serious. I think it's a strange coincidence that he shows up the day after Nathan's arrested, wanting property that Nathan controlled. Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of our drinks. I stirred honey into my tea, mind racing with possibilities. There's something else, Vanessa continued once the waitress had left. About a month ago, Nathan asked me to attend a dinner with Harrington, pretending to be a potential investor myself. He wanted me to get Harrington talking about his other projects. Why would he do that? Nathan said it was just business intelligence, but he seemed unusually tense about it. Afterward, he asked for detailed notes about everything Harrington said. I remembered Nathan mentioning Harrington in passing, always dismissively, as if the older developer were beneath his consideration. Nothing had indicated a deeper concern or connection. Maybe we're overthinking this, I suggested. Harrington could simply be opportunistic, seeing a chance to snap up property while Nathan's company is in chaos. Maybe, Vanessa conceded, though she didn't sound convinced. But Nathan seemed genuinely frightened in those last few days before everything fell apart. Not just about getting caught, but about something else. We fell silent, each lost in our own thoughts. Through the cafe window, I could see Detective Reyes in her unmarked car, maintaining discreet surveillance. How are you feeling? Vanessa asked suddenly, gesturing toward my pregnant belly. With everything happening? Physically, tired but fine. Emotionally? I gave a hollow laugh. Processing. You? Same? She traced the rim of her mug with a finger. I keep thinking about how differently things might have gone if I'd researched Nathan more thoroughly from the beginning. Checked his story about being separated. We can't torture ourselves with what-ifs, I said, surprised to find myself offering comfort to the woman who'd been my husband's mistress. Nathan was convincing because deception came naturally to him. Vanessa nodded. Still, I'm an interior designer. I literally verify measurements and materials for a living. But I took his word about everything that mattered. The bitter irony of our situation wasn't lost on me. 2 pregnant women, both betrayed by the same man, now united in navigating the wreckage he'd left behind. What will you do? I asked. After the baby comes? Move back to Chicago, probably. Start over. Vanessa's hand rested protectively over her stomach. My parents are there. They've been surprisingly supportive, all things considered. That's good, I said, meaning it. Whatever Vanessa's role in my marriage's destruction, her child was innocent. Lily's half-brother, a connection that would bind us long after Nathan's betrayal had faded into history. As we prepared to leave, Vanessa handed me a USB drive. I almost forgot. This was hidden in the penthouse, taped under a drawer in the master bathroom. I found it while looking for any clues about who had searched the place. I took the small device, turning it over in my palm. Have you looked at what's on it? No, Vanessa admitted. To be honest, I'm afraid to know more than I already do. But I thought you should have it. I thanked her, tucking the drive into my purse alongside my phone. "Emily," Vanessa said as we stood to leave, "whatever happens with Nathan, with the investigation, I want you to know I really didn't know about you until it was too late. That doesn't excuse anything, but—" "I believe you," I said simply. Outside, the autumn wind had picked up, scattering golden leaves across the sidewalk. Detective Reyes approached as Vanessa headed toward her car. "Learn anything useful?" she asked. I briefed her on our conversation, showing her the USB drive Vanessa had discovered. "This is becoming more complicated by the hour," Detective Reyes observed. "First Nathan's warning about powerful investors, now Harrington's sudden interest in the penthouse, plus this additional drive. Do you think there's something to it? Or is Nathan just trying to deflect attention from himself?" Detective Reyes considered the question. "In my experience, financial crimes this sophisticated rarely involve just one person. There are usually either co-conspirators or people looking the other way in exchange for benefits. Like James Harrington? Possibly. He's certainly powerful enough to have influence in both legitimate and questionable business dealings." She gestured toward her car. "Let's get both drives to our tech team. If there's a connection, we'll find it." At the police station, I surrendered. Both drives to the forensic team, providing the password Nathan had mentioned for the H' folder. While they worked, Detective Reyes guided me through a formal statement about my conversation with Nathan, carefully documenting his admissions and warnings. "This will significantly strengthen the case against him," she assured me as I signed the final document. "His explicit acknowledgement that you had no knowledge of the fraudulent activities should clear your name completely." "What happens next with the investigation?" I asked. "We follow the evidence. Nathan, the money trails, anyone else who might be implicated." She leaned back in her chair, studying me thoughtfully. "But you don't need to be involved in every step. Your priority should be taking care of yourself and your baby." As if on cue, Lily delivered a forceful kick that made me wince. "She agrees with you." Detective Reyes smiled. "Smart kid already." A knock at the door interrupted us, a young officer with a troubled expression. "Detective, you're needed in the tech room, urgently." Detective Reyes excused herself, following the officer down the hallway. Through the partially open door, I watched their rapid retreat, sensing that whatever they'd found on the drives wasn't routine financial fraud. Left alone in the interview room, I felt the weight of the past weeks pressing down. From discovering Nathan's betrayal to the public confrontation at the baby shower, from learning the extent of his financial crimes to sitting across from him in a hospital room, each revelation had shifted my understanding of my life, my marriage, myself. The door opened again, Detective Reyes returning with a grim expression. "What is it?" I asked, immediately alert. "What did they find?" She sat down, choosing her words carefully. "The folder Nathan directed us to contains evidence of something much larger than we initially thought. Not just financial fraud, but potential corruption involving several high-profile developers and city officials." "City officials? For what?" "Bribes for zoning changes? Advance notice of development plans? Manipulation of property values." Detective Reyes lowered her voice. "James Harrington's name appears repeatedly, along with 2 city council members and a judge." The implications were staggering. "And Nathan was involved in this?" "From what we can tell so far, Nathan was initially a participant, then began documenting everything, perhaps as leverage, perhaps as insurance. The technical team is still analyzing, but it appears he's been collecting evidence for at least a year." I thought back to Nathan's increasingly erratic behavior over the past year. The late nights, the secretiveness, the sudden interest in projects he'd previously dismissed. "The second drive, the one Vanessa found," Detective Reyes continued, "contains similar documentation but focuses specifically on the Riverside development. It suggests Harrington was pressuring Nathan to sell the project at a significant loss. Why would he do that?" We're not entirely sure yet, but there's a proposal for a major infrastructure project in that area. A proposal that hasn't been made public yet. The pieces began falling into place. So whoever controls that property, before the announcement stands to make a fortune. Detective Reyes nodded. Exactly, and Nathan knew about it somehow. That explains why he was so desperate to maintain control of the penthouse, I realized. It wasn't about Vanessa or their child, it was about keeping his stake in the property. Which makes James Harrington's sudden interest in viewing the penthouse even more suspicious, Detective Reyes concluded. We sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the implications. What had begun as the painful unraveling of my marriage had expanded into something far more complex and potentially dangerous. What does this mean for Nathan, legally speaking? Detective Reyes sighed. It complicates things. If he cooperates fully, provides testimony against the others involved, there could be consideration for reduced charges. But it's too early to say for certain. I thought of Nathan in his hospital bed, the mixture of shame and fear in his eyes when he'd warned me about the drive's contents. Had he been trying to protect me, or simply negotiating a better position? For himself? And what about me? I asked. If these powerful people realize I have this information? Detective Reyes's expression turned serious. That's my concern as well. Until we understand the full scope of what we're dealing with, we need to take additional precautions for your safety. My hand instinctively moved to my belly. You think I could be in danger? I think we need to be cautious, she amended. These are influential people with significant resources and potentially a lot to lose. At minimum, we should arrange for you to stay somewhere secure for the next few days. The suggestion triggered a fresh wave of disorientation. My home no longer felt safe. My husband was under guard in a hospital after attempting suicide. And now I potentially faced danger from powerful figures I'd never even met. I hate this, I said quietly. I hate that he's dragged me into something so much bigger than our marriage, that even now he's still controlling the situation. Detective, Reyes reached across the table, her hand covering mine briefly. I understand. But remember, you've been incredibly strong through all of this. You exposed Nathan at the baby shower when many would have stayed silent. You helped us capture him when he tried to flee. You found crucial evidence on your own. Initiative. Don't underestimate yourself. Her words, though meant to reassure, underscored the surreal turn my life had taken. A month ago, I'd been preparing for my baby shower, arranging pink peonies, and choosing party favors. Now I was discussing police protection and corruption investigations. What do I need to do? I asked, straightening my shoulders. For tonight, I'd recommend a hotel under a different name. Tomorrow we can arrange something more permanent if needed. Detective Reyes checked her watch. I can have an officer take you to collect essentials from your brother's apartment first. As we finalized arrangements, my phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. Mom just showed up at my place looking for you. Says it's urgent. Should I tell her where you are? I showed the text to Detective Reyes, who frowned. Your mother is in town? I thought she lived in Florida. She does. Confirmed, unease creeping up my spine. And she wasn't due to visit until after Lily's birth. We exchanged troubled glances, both recognizing the oddity of the situation. Tell your brother not to disclose your whereabouts, Detective Reyes advised. Ask what she wants specifically. I typed quickly. Don't tell her anything yet. Ask why she's there and what's so urgent. Daniel's response came moments later. Says she got a disturbing call about you and the baby. Wouldn't elaborate. Seems really anxious. This feels wrong, I said, showing Detective Reyes the message. My mother would have called me directly if she was worried, not shown up unannounced at Daniel's. Detective Reyes was already on her feet. I'm calling for backup at your brother's address. This could be someone attempting to locate you. Fear, sharp and immediate, coursed through me. Daniel. We'll make sure he's safe. Detective Reyes assured me, already issuing orders over her radio. Stay here with Officer Chen. As she hurried from the room, I sat frozen, one hand pressed against my belly where Lily kicked restlessly, as if sensing my distress. In just hours, the abstract warning Nathan had given me about powerful people had transformed into what felt like a very real threat. My phone buzzed again. Daniel calling this time, not texting. I answered immediately. Emily? His voice was hushed, tense. There's a man with Mom. They're saying you're in danger and need to come with them for protection. My blood ran cold. Daniel? That's not Mom. Mom's still in Florida. I spoke to her yesterday. A beat of silence. Then, oh shit. Daniel, listen to me. Police are on their way. Don't. The line went dead. Daniel, I shouted into the silent phone, my voice echoing in the empty interview room. The door burst open as Officer Chen rushed in, alerted by my cry. What's happened? She demanded, hand hovering near her weapon. Someone's at my brother's apartment pretending to be my mother, I explained, panic rising in my throat. The call just cut off. Detective Reyes was sending backup. Officer Chen was immediately on her radio, confirming the dispatch of units to Daniel's address. They're 3 minutes out, she assured me, her calm professionalism a stark contrast to my mounting terror. I tried calling Daniel again, then texting, receiving no response to either. The minutes crawled by with excruciating slowness, each second stretching as I imagined worst-case scenarios. Lily kicked forcefully, as if sharing my distress. Finally, Officer Chen's radio crackled to life. Subject residence secure. 1 male occupant present unharmed. 2 suspects fled the scene in a dark sedan, partial plate Echo Tango 7. No visual on female suspect mentioned. Relief made my knees weak. Daniel's okay? Officer Chen nodded, relaying my question through her radio. The confirmation came immediately. Daniel was shaken, but physically unharmed. Can I speak with him? I asked. Within moments, Officer Chen handed me her official phone. Your brother's on the line. Emily? Daniel's voice was strained but steady. I'm fine. They left when I challenged them about Mom. Said they were going to get proof or something. I locked myself in the bathroom until the police arrived. I'm so sorry, I said, guilt washing over me. I never thought they'd come to your place. Hey, stop that, he interrupted. This isn't your fault. It's the people who are trying to intimidate you. A pause. It was scary how convincing they were, Em. The woman looked enough like Mom that I didn't question it at first, especially with everything else going on. Did you see the man clearly? Could you identify him? Average height, expensive suit. He stayed mostly in the shadows, let the woman do the talking. But he had this ring. I noticed it when he checked his watch. Large, with some kind of crest or emblem. I relayed this information to Officer Chen, who made notes for Detective Reyes. Listen, Daniel continued, I'm going to stay with Jason for a few days. Jason was his longtime friend who worked in private security. Somewhere these people won't know to look. That's smart, I agreed, relieved he wouldn't be alone. I'll be in touch as soon as I can. Stay safe. After ending the call, I sat back, trying to process this latest development. The abstract threat Nathan had warned about had materialized with frightening speed, targeting my family in an attempt to get to me. Detective Reyes returned 20 minutes later, her expression grave. We've put out an APB on the vehicle. Your brother gave us a good description of both suspects. This is about the drives, isn't it? What Nathan was involved in? She nodded grimly. Almost certainly, which means we need to move quickly to get you somewhere secure. What about Nathan? If these people are trying to find me, they might go after him too. We've increased security at the hospital and notified his medical team, Detective Reyes assured me, but our priority right now is your safety. Within the hour, I was checked into a modest hotel on the outskirts of Oakwood under a false name. a female officer stationed discreetly in the room across the hall. The generic room with its beige walls and floral prints felt surreal, another temporary space in what had become a series of displacements. I placed my small overnight bag on the bed, the few essentials Officer Chen had helped me collect from Daniel's apartment before he left for Jason's. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Heard about what happened with Daniel. Are you safe?" I hesitated before responding, suddenly paranoid about digital communications. Detective Reyes had warned me to be cautious, to assume my regular phone might be compromised. "Safe for now," I replied simply. "Using a new number soon. Will contact when I can." It was nearly midnight by the time I settled into bed, exhaustion pulling at me despite the day's adrenaline. Just as I was drifting off, my phone lit up with a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Emily, it's Alex." Nathan's business partner sounded tense, his normally measured voice tight with urgency. "I know it's late, but I needed to reach you securely. Rachel Goldman gave me this number." I sat up, suddenly alert. "What's wrong?" "Someone broke into the office tonight. They went straight for Nathan's files, knew exactly what they were looking for." "Did they find anything?" "Not what they wanted, apparently. They left quite a mess." Alex paused. "Emily, they also went through your personnel file from when you did contract work for us last year. Had your home address? Your brother's information?" My mouth went dry. "Alex? Someone showed up at Daniel's apartment today pretending to be my mother. A woman and a man in an expensive suit." "Damn." Alex's voice dropped lower. "Emily, I think I know who's behind this. After the baby shower, I started looking into some of Nathan's more unusual projects, things that never quite made sense financially. There's a pattern of involvement with Harrington Development." "James Harrington," I said, remembering Vanessa's information. "We've uncovered connections between him, Nathan, and potentially some city officials." "It goes deeper than that," Alex said. "Harrington's been buying up properties along the river for years, seemingly random acquisitions. But when you map them out, they form a perfect outline of the proposed transportation corridor. The one that hasn't been announced yet," I realized. "Exactly. Information worth millions to anyone who had it in advance, and Nathan had it somehow." A piece clicked into place. That's why Nathan was so adamant about keeping control of the Riverside apartments. They're right in the middle of that corridor. "Yes, but here's where it gets complicated. Nathan wasn't working with Harrington on this. Based on what I found, he was actively interfering with Harrington's plans, blocking sales, outbidding him on key properties." I frowned, trying to reconcile this with what we already knew. "So Nathan was what, running his own competing scheme?" "I think he was gathering leverage," Alex said slowly. "Evidence of corruption he could use if things went south, which they did, spectacularly." I thought of the drives now in police custody, the files Nathan had so meticulously maintained. But why warn me about it? Why not just use that leverage? Himself? Because he's in no position to use it now, Alex pointed out. Discredited, hospitalized, facing serious charges. But you still have credibility, and apparently access to whatever evidence he collected. The weight of what Alex was suggesting settled over me. These are powerful people, Alex. They just tried to abduct my brother. What am I supposed to do with this information? "That's why I'm calling," he said. "I have a contact at the Federal Bureau, not local law enforcement who might have connections to city officials, someone who specializes in public corruption cases. You want me to take this federal?" "I think it might be the safest play at this point. Wider jurisdiction, fewer potential conflicts of interest." Alex sounded weary. "Emily, I've lost my business partner and possibly my company because of Nathan's actions. But what's happening now goes beyond business. It's dangerous." I thought of Daniel, of the false mother who had appeared at his door, of the spreading ripples of Nathan's deception threatening to engulf everyone connected to him. Give me your contact's information, I decided. I'll call first thing tomorrow. After ending the call with Alex, I lay awake in the unfamiliar hotel bed, one hand resting on my belly where Lily shifted restlessly. The magnitude of what I'd stumbled into was overwhelming. Not just Nathan's personal betrayals, but a web of corruption that stretched through Oakwood's power structures. Sleep finally claimed me in the early morning hours, bringing dreams of mazes and faceless pursuers. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and Detective Reyes knocking at my door. "We've had a development," she said once I'd let her in. "The forensic team completed their analysis of both drives overnight. What they found corroborates everything: the corruption, the advanced knowledge of development plans, Harrington's involvement. So what happens now?" "That's actually why I'm here." Detective Reyes hesitated uncharacteristically. "The case is being transferred to federal jurisdiction. FBI agents will be here within the hour to take your statement." I thought of Alex's advice from the night before. That seems appropriate given the scope of what's involved. "It is," she agreed. "But I wanted to warn you personally. This is going to get complicated. The federal investigation will focus on the corruption and financial crimes, not necessarily on protecting you from potential threats." "What are you saying?" Detective Reyes sat on the edge of the desk chair, leaning toward me. "I'm saying that while I believe the FBI will handle the case professionally, their priority will be building evidence against Harrington and the officials involved. Your safety might become secondary to their larger goals." A chill ran through me. So what should I do? Be cautious. Don't volunteer more information than necessary. And consider that witness protection might eventually be discussed, depending on how this unfolds. Witness protection? The words hung in the air, ominous and life-altering. "You mean leaving Oakwood? Starting over somewhere else?" "It might not come to that," Detective Reyes said quickly. "But you should be prepared for all possibilities." As promised, 2 FBI agents arrived within the hour. A stern-faced woman named Agent Keller and her younger partner, Agent Diaz. They reviewed the case files Detective Reyes had prepared, interviewed me extensively about Nathan, the drives, and the attempted approach at Daniel's apartment. "Based on what we've reviewed," Agent Keller concluded after several hours, "this case connects to an ongoing investigation into corruption within Oakwood's development community. Mr. Wilson appears to have been both a participant and, later, a potential whistleblower." "Which makes you a key witness," Agent Diaz added, "particularly given your access to the evidence and your direct connection to Nathan Wilson." "What about the people who came looking for me? The threat they pose?" The agents exchanged glances. "We'll arrange appropriate security measures," Agent Keller said carefully. "But we also need your cooperation in drawing out additional evidence." "Drawing out?" I repeated, suddenly wary. "What exactly does that mean?" "Controlled contact," Agent Diaz explained. "Using secure methods to communicate with key figures in the investigation while we monitor the interactions." I stared at them incredulously. "You want to use me as bait?" "We want to leverage your unique position, Agent," Keller corrected smoothly. "Mr. Wilson trusted you with knowledge of this evidence. The other parties involved clearly believe you have access to information they need. That creates an opportunity." Detective Reyes, who had remained silent during most of the interview, cleared her throat. "Mrs. Wilson is 7 months pregnant. Her safety, and her child's, should be the absolute priority here." Agent Keller's expression softened slightly. "Of course, we're not suggesting anything that would place Mrs. Wilson in physical danger. Everything would be done with maximum security protocols." I placed a protective hand over my belly, feeling Lily's reassuring movements. "I need to think about this, and I'd like to consult with my attorney." The agents agreed, providing contact information and arranging for an FBI security detail to replace the local officers. As they prepared to leave, Agent Diaz paused. "One more thing, Mrs. Wilson. Have you had any contact with Vanessa Porter since yesterday?" The question caught me off guard. "No. Why?" "We've been unable to locate her since early this morning. Her apartment appears to have been searched, and she hasn't reported to work." Fear, cold and immediate, gripped me. "You think something's happened to her?" "We're exploring all possibilities," Agent Keller said, her neutral tone doing nothing to ease my concern. "If she contacts you, please let us know immediately." After they left, I called Vanessa's number, receiving no answer. I sent a text. "Please contact me when you get this. Important." "They've got her, don't they?" I asked. Detective Reyes, who had stayed behind. "The same people who came for Daniel." "We don't know that," she said, though her expression suggested otherwise. "But it's a concerning development." I paced the small hotel room, anxiety mounting. This is insane. 2 days ago, my biggest concern was Nathan's affair and financial fraud. Now there's corruption, federal investigations, and people disappearing. I understand it's overwhelming. Overwhelming doesn't begin to cover it. I stopped pacing, suddenly exhausted. What happens to Vanessa's baby if something's happened to her? What about my own child? How am I supposed to protect Lily when I can't even predict what's coming next? Detective Reyes approached cautiously, her normally professional demeanor softening. "Emily, I know this is frightening, but you've shown remarkable strength through all of this, and you're not alone. There are people working to ensure your safety." "But you're leaving," I said, the realization hitting me. "Now that the FBI's taken over." "Officially, yes, but I've requested to remain as local liaison." She handed me a card with a number handwritten on the back. "This is my personal cell. Day or night, if you need anything or feel unsafe, call me directly." The kindness in this simple gesture nearly undid me. I blinked back tears, accepting the card with a murmured thanks. After Detective Reyes departed, I contacted Rachel Goldman, bringing her up to speed on the FBI's involvement and their request for my cooperation. "Absolutely not," Rachel said firmly. "They cannot expect a pregnant woman to participate in an active investigation involving people who have already demonstrated they're willing to use intimidation tactics." "But if it helps build the case?" "Your priority is your child, Emily, not serving as an investigative tool for the FBI." Rachel's tone brooked no argument. "I'm coming to the hotel. We need to discuss options for keeping you safely out of this while still cooperating with the legitimate aspects of the investigation." While waiting for Rachel to arrive, I tried Vanessa's number again without success. Worry gnawed at me. Whatever. Her role in the collapse of my marriage, Vanessa was another expectant mother caught in this expanding web of danger. My phone chimed with a text notification from an unknown number. "We have what you're looking for. Riverside Marina, Slip 42, 2 p.m. if you want her safe, come alone." Attached was a photo of Vanessa, her face pale but composed, holding up a newspaper with today's date. No visible injuries, but the implication was clear. Her safety depended on my cooperation. My hands shook as I stared at the message. Calling. The FBI immediately was the obvious response, the safe choice. Yet something held me back. The memory of Agent Keller's calculating assessment of my unique position, her clinical approach to using me to draw out evidence. If I alerted the authorities, they would likely set up an operation around the Marina meeting, using the opportunity to apprehend whoever was holding Vanessa. But what if something went wrong? What if Vanessa was harmed in the process? I paced the hotel room, weighing impossible options. The clock showed 12:30, 90 minutes until the meeting time. Not enough time for Rachel to arrive and advise me, barely enough time to formulate any kind of plan on my own. After several minutes of internal debate, I texted a response. "How? Do I know she'll be released if I come?" The reply came swiftly. "You don't. But absence guarantees consequences. Your choice. Cold, pragmatic, threatening. The language of someone accustomed to power and its exercise. I grabbed the hotel notepad, scribbling a hasty note explaining the situation and the meeting location, tucking it under the mattress where it would eventually be found. Then I gathered my purse, pulled on a coat against the autumn chill, and quietly left the room. The FBI agent posted in the hallway glanced up as I emerged. "Mrs. Wilson, is everything all right?" "Just feeling claustrophobic," I said, forcing a smile. "I thought I'd walk to the vending area, maybe get some fresh air in the courtyard." The agent nodded sympathetically. "I'll accompany you." "Actually," I hesitated, fabricating quickly, "I'm having some pregnancy discomfort. Women's issues. I'd really prefer a few minutes of privacy." The agent, a young man who instantly looked uncomfortable at the mention of women's issues, nodded. "Of course. The vending area is just down that hallway, and the courtyard entrance is beside it. I'll be right here when you return." "Thank you," I said, already moving toward the indicated hallway, guilt at the deception warring with determination to help Vanessa. The hotel's service exit beside the vending area was unalarmed, opening onto a side parking lot where taxis occasionally waited for guests. Fortune favored me. An older cab idled near the entrance, driver scrolling through his phone as I approached. "Riverside Marina," I said, sliding into the back seat. "As quickly as possible, please." The drive took just over 20 minutes, the cabbie chatting amiably about the unseasonably warm weather while I responded with non-committal murmurs, mind racing with contingency plans. Riverside Marina was busy for a weekday afternoon. Pleasure. Boats preparing for weekend outings. A few tourists strolling the boardwalk. I paid the driver and made my way toward the numbered slips, alert for any sign of surveillance or threat. Slip 42 held a sleek motor yacht, white with navy trim, the Guy name Harrington's legacy emblazoned on its stern. The confirmation of James Harrington's involvement sent a fresh wave of apprehension through me, but I forced myself to approach the gangplank with measured steps. A deckhand appeared as I reached the boat. "Mrs. Wilson? Mr. Harrington is expecting you." I followed him aboard, the gentle rocking of the vessel against the dock heightening my sense of unreality. The deckhand led me to a luxurious cabin where James Harrington himself sat at a polished table, examining documents with reading glasses perched on his nose. Harrington was in his 60s, silver-haired and distinguished, the epitome of old, money and established power. He looked up as I entered, removing his glasses with deliberate slowness. "Mrs. Wilson, thank you for coming. Please, sit." He gestured to a chair across from him. "Where's Vanessa?" I remained standing, one hand instinctively cradling my belly. "Safe, for the moment. Whether she remains so depends on our conversation." Harrington's voice was cultured, pleasant even, belying the menace of his words. "You've caused quite a stir these past few days." "I've caused?" I repeated incredulously. "Your people impersonated my mother, threatened my brother, and now you've abducted a pregnant woman. I think the stir is entirely of your making." A slight smile curved Harrington's lips. "Direct. I appreciate that." He nodded to the deckhand, who exited, closing the cabin door behind him. "You should know that this vessel is about to depart for a short cruise. We'll have privacy to discuss matters thoroughly." As if on cue, an engine rumbled to life beneath us, the yacht beginning to move away from the dock. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said, fighting rising panic. "People know where I am." "Do they?" Harrington raised an eyebrow. "I rather doubt that, given the efforts you made to evade your FBI protection. No, I think we have ample time to reach an understanding." The boat picked up speed, Oakwood's shoreline receding behind us. I remained standing, unwilling to concede even the small dominance of sitting at his direction. "What do you want?" "The same thing you want, Mrs. Wilson. Resolution." Harrington leaned back, studying me. "Your husband has placed us both in a difficult position. He accumulated sensitive information that could be damaging to many people, myself included. You mean evidence of corruption? I said flatly. Bribes for zoning changes, insider information about development, plans. Harrington's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. I see Nathan has been forthcoming. Yes, there have been informal arrangements that facilitated progress in Oakwood's development. Arrangements that benefited everyone involved, including the city itself. Including you, primarily. I won't apologize for being successful. Mrs. Wilson, Oakwood has prospered under development guided by those who understand what this city needs. And what it needs is for you to make millions on advanced knowledge of public projects. Harrington sighed, as if disappointed by my simplistic view. What it needs is coordination between private investment and public infrastructure. Sometimes, that requires flexibility in how information flows. You mean illegal sharing of confidential planning decisions? I mean practical governance, he countered smoothly. But we're straying from the point. Nathan collected evidence that, taken out of context, could be misinterpreted. That evidence is now in play, and I need to contain potential damage. I thought of the drives in FBI custody, the extensive documentation Nathan had compiled. It's too late. The authorities already have everything. Not everything, Harrington said with quiet certainty. Nathan maintained redundancies. Dead man switches, if you will. Information to be released if anything happened to him. The yacht continued moving into deeper water, Oakwood's skyline growing distant. Through a porthole, I could see we were headed toward the center of the lake, away from prying eyes or potential assistance. I don't have access to any additional information, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Whatever Nathan set up, he didn't share it with me. And yet he specifically warned you about the contents of those drives, directed you to particular files. Harrington's gaze was penetrating. Nathan trusted you with something, Mrs. Wilson. I need to know what. He told me to be careful who I trust, I admitted. That's all. A wise admonition. Harrington stood, moving to a cabinet where he poured himself a measure of amber liquid. Let me be direct, Mrs. Wilson. I don't wish you harm. Quite the contrary, I respect your resilience through this ordeal, but Nathan has placed us on opposing sides of a very serious situation. By documenting your illegal activities, by breaking faith, Harrington corrected sharply. He participated willingly in our arrangements for years, profiting handsomely. Only when he overextended himself financially did he begin this insurance collection. I recalled Nathan's hospital confession, how legitimate investments had soured, leading to increasingly desperate financial maneuvers. Had his corruption involvement followed a similar pattern? What about Vanessa? I asked, returning to my immediate concern. She has nothing to do with any of this. Ms. Porter had the misfortune of finding additional materials in the penthouse, materials that rightfully belong to me. Harrington sipped his drink. She's unharmed, I assure you. Merely detained while we resolve this situation. The casual power in his tone, the assumption that he could simply detain people against their will without consequence, chilled me. This was a man accustomed to operating above ordinary constraints. And how exactly do you propose we resolve this? Harrington set down his glass, returning to the table where he opened a laptop. Nathan established a secure server containing what he called his legacy file, all the evidence he'd gathered, set to automatically release to media outlets, and law enforcement if not regularly reset with a passphrase. The screen showed a simple interface with a countdown timer, currently showing less than 48 hours remaining. The passphrase requires two-factor authentication, Harrington continued. A code Nathan established and a biometric confirmation, your fingerprint specifically. He was clever enough to ensure I couldn't simply force the information from him alone. I stared at the screen, mind racing. Why would Nathan use my biometric data? We've been estranged for weeks. Because he knew you were the one person who might be willing to protect his legacy, even after everything he'd done. His insurance against me simply eliminating him as a problem. Harrington's clinical assessment sent a shiver through me. So what exactly are you asking me to do? Reset the timer, buy us time to negotiate a more permanent solution. And if I refuse? Harrington's expression hardened. Then, in roughly 44 hours, information will be released implicating dozens of Oakwood's most prominent citizens in a corruption scandal. The ensuing chaos will devastate this city's economy, halt all development projects, and likely result in numerous prosecutions. Including yours, I pointed out. I've weathered storms before, Mrs. Wilson. My concerns are more comprehensive. The implied threat hung in the air between us. If Harrington was willing to abduct Vanessa and lure me onto his yacht, what other measures might he take to prevent his exposure? And if I reset the timer, what happens to Vanessa? To me and my child? Ms. Porter will be released immediately. You'll be returned safely to shore. And we'll establish a more controlled process for handling the information Nathan collected, one that allows for necessary reform without destroying everything we've built. The offer was reasonable on its surface, a peaceful resolution that protected Vanessa and potentially minimized further danger. Yet something in Harrington's too careful phrasing triggered warning bells. You're not planning to simply let us go, I realized. Once the timer is reset, you'll have us taken somewhere, held until you've secured the information permanently. A flash of irritation crossed Harrington's face. Your husband warned me you were perceptive. He had occasional moments of accuracy, I said dryly. Harrington closed the laptop. Allow me to be completely transparent, Mrs. Wilson. I have no desire to harm you or your child, but I cannot allow that information to be released, and I cannot trust that you won't eventually cooperate with authorities. The reset buys us time, nothing more. The yacht had stopped moving, now drifting in the center of the lake, far from shore or other vessels. Through the cabin windows, I could see a second, smaller boat approaching, likely our transportation to whatever secure location Harrington had prepared. Where is Vanessa now? In the forward cabin, unharmed, as I said. I considered my options, desperately limited on a boat in the middle of the lake. Refusing Harrington's demand would endanger both Vanessa and myself immediately. Complying might buy time for the FBI to track us, for Detective Reyes to find my note, for someone to realize we were missing. I'll reset the timer, I said finally, but I want to see Vanessa first, confirm she's all right. Harrington studied me for a moment, then nodded. A reasonable request? He pressed an intercom button. Bring Ms. Porter to the main cabin. Minutes later, the door opened to reveal Vanessa, escorted by the deckhand from earlier. Her face brightened with relief when she saw me. Emily, are you okay? They said they'd hurt you if I didn't. I'm fine, I interrupted, not wanting Harrington to know what leverage they'd used against her. Are you hurt? She shook her head, one hand protectively covering her pregnant belly in a gesture that mirrored my own. Just scared. Harrington gestured impatiently. A touching reunion. Now, Mrs. Wilson, the timer. I moved to the laptop, studying the interface. The system required a passphrase followed by fingerprint authentication on an attached scanner. What's the passphrase? Lily Dillon Tom 2024, Harrington said. The names of your children with the year. The personal nature of the passphrase, incorporating not just my unborn daughter but also Nathan's son with Vanessa, struck me as oddly sentimental for a man who had proven himself so calculating. I entered the code, then hesitated with my finger above the scanner. And after I do this, you'll be taken to shore, Harrington said smoothly. A different shore, admittedly, but safe accommodations while we resolve the larger issue. His evasiveness confirmed my suspicions. Once the timer was reset, Vanessa and I would effectively become hostages until Harrington secured permanent control of Nathan's evidence. With no immediate alternative, I pressed my finger to the scanner. The screen processed for a moment, then displayed a new message. Authentication accepted. Reset or release? Select reset, Harrington instructed, moving closer to observe. I clicked the option, triggering another prompt. Reset for standard interval, 72 hours, or custom setting? Standard, Harrington said, visibly relaxing as the countdown reset to 72 hours. Excellent. Now we have... He was interrupted by a sharp rap at the cabin door. The deckhand entered, expression tense. Sir, there's a Coast Guard vessel approaching. They're hailing us and requesting permission to board. Harrington's composed facade cracked slightly. On what grounds? They say they're assisting the FBI in locating 2 missing persons. The deckhand glanced nervously at Vanessa and me. They've ordered us to cut engines and prepare for boarding. Through the windows, I could see the Coast Guard boat growing larger, its blue lights flashing against the afternoon sky. Relief flooded through me, even as Harrington's expression darkened with calculation. How did they find us so quickly? He muttered, more to himself than to us. I said nothing, not wanting to reveal the tracking app Jessica had installed on my phone weeks ago, a safety measure after Nathan's behavior became increasingly erratic. The same app that had likely led the authorities straight to us. Harrington straightened his jacket, composure returning. We have nothing to hide, a simple pleasure cruise with friends. He fixed me with a pointed stare. Isn't that right, Mrs. Wilson? The implied threat was clear. Cooperate with his deception or face consequences. But with Coast Guard personnel moments from boarding, the balance of power had shifted. Actually, I said calmly, I think it's time for the truth to come out. All of it. Before Harrington could respond, heavy footsteps sounded on the deck above, followed by authoritative voices announcing federal authority to board. The deckhand looked to Harrington for direction. Sir? Harrington's jaw tightened, the mask of civilized negotiation slipping to reveal the ruthless calculation beneath. It seems our options have narrowed considerably. He moved suddenly, far faster than I would have expected from a man his age, grabbing my arm and pulling me against him as a human shield. Perhaps a revised negotiation is in order. Vanessa gasped as Harrington withdrew a small pistol from his jacket, holding it against my side where it pressed into my pregnant belly. The unmistakable threat to my unborn child froze me in place. When they enter, he said quietly, you will explain that there's been a misunderstanding, that you came willingly to discuss business matters. Do you understand? I nodded mutely, mind racing for a way out of this new danger. The footsteps grew closer, descending toward the cabin. Mr. Harrington? A voice called from just outside. Federal agents, we're coming in. The door opened to reveal Agent Keller, weapon drawn, flanked by Coast Guard officers similarly armed. Her gaze took in the scene instantly, Harrington using me as a shield, the gun concealed between us. James Harrington, she said evenly, you're under arrest for kidnapping, extortion, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Release Mrs. Wilson and put down your weapon. There's been a misunderstanding, Harrington replied, his cultured voice betraying no tension despite the gun pressed against my unborn child. Mrs. Wilson came voluntarily to discuss some business matters related to her husband's affairs. Agent Keller's gaze shifted to me. Is that accurate, Mrs. Wilson? I could feel Harrington's grip tighten in warning, the pressure of the gun against my belly, a terrifying reminder of what was at stake. Mrs. Wilson and her unborn child are in a delicate position, Harrington continued when I didn't immediately respond. Perhaps we could discuss this like civilized people? Agent Keller didn't lower her weapon. Mrs. Wilson, blink twice if you're being held against your will. I met her eyes and deliberately blinked twice. Disappointing, Harrington murmured, his grip shifting as he prepared for some desperate action. In that moment of distraction, I drove my elbow backward with all my strength, aiming for his solar plexus. The blow connected solidly, causing Harrington to gasp and stumble backward. The gun wavered, then pointed downward as he struggled to regain his composure. Agent Keller moved with impressive speed, closing the distance and knocking the weapon from Harrington's hand before he could recover. Coast Guard officers swarmed in, securing Harrington as Agent Diaz guided Vanessa and me safely to the other side of the cabin. "Are you hurt?" Agent Diaz asked, quickly examining me for injuries. "No," I managed, adrenaline making my voice shake. But he was going to take us somewhere, hold us until he could secure Nathan's evidence permanently. Agent Keller joined us as Harrington was handcuffed and read his rights, his aristocratic demeanor now replaced with cold fury. "You have no idea what you're doing," he spat. "The consequences of this will reach further than you can imagine." "Save it for your attorney, Mr. Harrington," Agent Keller said coolly as the officers led him away. "You'll need excellent representation." The journey back to shore passed in a blur of medical checks and preliminary statements. Vanessa and I sat huddled under blankets provided by the Coast Guard, the autumn wind cutting across the water as the vessels made their way to the marina, where Detective Reyes waited alongside a fleet of official vehicles. "How did you find us so quickly?" I asked Agent Diaz as the marina came into view. "Your tracking app sent an alert to Jessica Chen when you left the designated safe zone," he explained. "She contacted Detective Reyes immediately, who reached out to us." I made a mental note to buy Jessica the most expensive thank you gift I could afford. Her foresight had potentially saved our lives. Once ashore, paramedics examined both Vanessa and me, paying particular attention to our pregnancies given the stress we'd endured. Detective Reyes hovered nearby, her professional demeanor not quite hiding her concern. "The baby's heartbeat is strong," the paramedic assured me after listening with a portable monitor. "But you should follow up with your obstetrician as soon as possible." Vanessa received similar advice, her face pale but composed as she submitted to the examination. When the paramedic stepped away, she moved closer to me. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for coming when they threatened me. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," I replied simply. "Whatever happened between us because of Nathan, neither of us deserved this." She nodded, one hand resting protectively over her belly. "What happens now?" A good question, one I was still formulating an answer to when Agent Keller approached, her expression grim but satisfied. "Mrs. Wilson, Ms. Porter, we'd like to take your formal statements at our field office. Then we'll arrange secure accommodations for you both while the investigation proceeds." "How long will that take?" Vanessa asked, worry creasing her brow. "I need to contact my parents, make arrangements." "You'll be able to make necessary calls under supervision," Agent Keller assured her. "But given the profile of those involved, in this conspiracy, we need to maintain security protocols until all suspects are in custody." I thought of the countdown timer on Harrington's laptop, reset to 72 hours before whatever Nathan had compiled would be automatically released. "There's something else you should know. Nathan created a dead man switch with all the evidence. It's set to release everything to media and law enforcement in less than 3 days." Agent Keller's eyebrows rose. "Can you stop it?" "I already reset it once on Harrington's demand, but I don't know how to disable it completely." "We'll need to speak with your husband," she said, making notes on her phone. "See if he's willing to cooperate in exchange for consideration during sentencing." The mention of Nathan sent a pang through me, not of longing or even anger anymore, but something more complex. Despite his betrayals, he had ultimately created an insurance system that included me as a key component. Had trusted me, in his way, even as he prepared contingencies against everyone else. At the FBI field office, a nondescript building in downtown Oakwood, Vanessa and I gave detailed statements about our abductions, Harrington's demands, and the threat he had posed. Detective Reyes remained present throughout, a familiar face amid the federal agents swarming around us. You took an enormous risk, she said during a break, handing me a cup of herbal tea. Going to meet Harrington without alerting anyone. I left a note, I pointed out, and I was desperate to help Vanessa. Next time, trust us to do our jobs. Her tone was gently chiding, but her eyes conveyed understanding. Though there shouldn't be a next time. Harrington's arrest has triggered a cascade effect. Several city officials are already coming forward, looking to cut deals. By evening, arrangements had been made for both Vanessa and me to stay at a secure FBI facility outside the city. Comfortable, if institutional accommodations where we would remain until the immediate threat had passed. What about Nathan? I asked Agent Keller as we prepared to leave. Has he been told what happened? We've conducted a preliminary interview, she confirmed. He's provided passwords and access codes for the remaining evidence, including instructions for fully disabling the dead man's switch. And did he ask about me? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Agent Keller's expression softened slightly. Yes. He asked if you and the baby were unharmed, seemed genuinely relieved when told you were safe. I nodded, unsure how to process this small gesture amid the wreckage of our relationship. As we were escorted to the waiting SUVs, my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Heard you're okay. Thank God. Call when you can. Love you, sis. The simple message brought unexpected tears to my eyes, a reminder of the genuine connections that remained in my life, untainted by Nathan's deceptions or Harrington's threats. The secure facility turned out to be a repurposed corporate retreat center, with comfortable rooms and extensive grounds surrounded by a discreet but effective security perimeter. Vanessa and I were given adjacent suites, our needs attended to, by a staff that managed to be both attentive and unobtrusive. After a light dinner and another medical check confirming both our pregnancies remained stable despite the day's ordeal, I found myself on the suite's small balcony, watching darkness settle over unfamiliar surroundings. A soft knock at the door revealed Detective Reyes, now in civilian clothes rather than her usual professional attire. Just checking in before I head back to the city, she said, accepting my invitation to join me on the balcony. How are you holding up? Physically fine? Mentally? I shrugged, the gesture encompassing the overwhelming events of the past weeks. Processing, I suppose. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. It's a lot to absorb. From discovering your husband's affair to uncovering a citywide corruption scheme in less than a month. When you put it that way, it sounds absurd, I said with a tired laugh. Like something from a movie. Not my actual life. The best stories are often the ones we never planned to be part of. Detective Reyes leaned against the railing, studying the darkening landscape. For what it's worth, I've been doing this job for 15 years. And I've rarely seen anyone handle this kind of situation with the grace and courage you've shown. The unexpected compliment warmed me. Thank you. Though I'm not sure sneaking out of protective custody to meet a potential kidnapper qualifies as good judgment. Perhaps not, she conceded with a smile. But your instinct to protect Vanessa, despite everything that happened between you, that speaks to your character. We fell silent, the evening breeze carrying the scent of pine from the surrounding woods. There's something you should know, Detective Reyes said finally. Nathan has agreed to full cooperation with the federal investigation. In exchange, he's requesting a meeting with you. I stiffened. Why? He says there are things he needs to tell you that can't be conveyed through intermediaries. She turned to face me directly. You are under absolutely no obligation to see him, Emily. No one would blame you for refusing. I considered this, emotions churning beneath my carefully maintained composure. What could Nathan possibly say that would matter now? What explanation could justify the devastation he'd caused? Yet a small voice reminded me that soon I would be a mother. Lily would someday ask questions about her father, about what had happened between us. Could I face her knowing I'd refused this final conversation? I'll think about it, I said finally. But not tonight. Tonight I just want to rest. Detective Reyes nodded, respecting my ambivalence. The offer remains open. Just let me know what you decide. She handed me a business card with a handwritten number. My direct line. For anything, anytime. After she left, I crawled into the unfamiliar bed, exhaustion pulling me toward sleep despite the day's turmoil. Lily shifted restlessly within me, as if sensing my preoccupation. "It's okay, baby girl," I whispered, hand cradling my belly. "We're going to be fine, you and me." The words felt like a promise, not just to my unborn daughter, but to myself. Whatever happened next, we would survive it. We would rebuild. 3 days passed in the relative calm of the secure facility. Vanessa and I established a cautious routine, taking meals together, walking the perimeter path under watchful eyes of security personnel, gradually building something that wasn't quite friendship but transcended our initial roles as wife and mistress. "I'm going back to Chicago," she told me during one such walk. "My parents have a guest house where the baby and I can stay until I figure out next steps." "That sounds like a good plan," I said, genuinely glad she had family support. "Fresh start. What about you? Will you stay in Oakwood?" I considered the question, one I'd been pondering since our rescue. "I don't know yet. So much depends on how this all plays out. The investigation, the legal proceedings." "And Nathan?" Vanessa asked carefully. "Nathan made his choices," I said, my tone firmer than I'd intended. "My priority now is Lily and creating a stable life for her." News filtered in through our FBI handlers. Harrington had been denied bail, considered both a flight risk and a danger to witnesses. Several city officials had resigned, with indictments expected imminently. Alex had called to report that while Wilson and Mercer development was under financial scrutiny, he had been cleared of involvement in Nathan's schemes. On the fourth morning, Agent Keller arrived with a file folder and a carefully neutral expression. "Nathan Wilson's attorneys have filed a formal cooperation agreement," she informed me in the facility's small conference room. "He's providing extensive evidence against Harrington and others involved in the corruption scheme." "In exchange for what?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. "Reduced charges, recommendation for minimum sentencing." Agent Keller slid the folder toward me. He's also signed these. Inside were divorce papers, already completed and signed on Nathan's side. Financial disclosures showed he had voluntarily surrendered all claims to our joint assets. The house, his company shares, everything transferred to my name without contest. "He's giving up everything?" I asked, bewildered by this uncharacteristic surrender. "Not voluntarily," Agent Keller clarified. "The assets would be subject to seizure anyway, given the fraud charges. But by transferring them directly to you and cooperating fully, he's ensuring you won't be entangled in extended legal proceedings." I flipped through the documents, each page bearing Nathan's familiar signature. A separate deed caught my attention. The lakeside property, now transferred solely to me with a notation. "For Lily's future." "Has Nathan said why he's doing this?" I asked, struggling to reconcile this apparent selflessness with the calculating man who had maintained multiple lives simultaneously. Agent Keller hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "He says it's the only way he can offer any real amends. That he wants you and your daughter to have security, whatever happens to him." A sticky note marked a section titled "Additional Provisions," where Nathan had included life insurance policies with Lily as beneficiary, educational trust funds, arrangements ensuring long-term financial stability regardless of his incarceration. "And he still wants to meet with you," Agent Keller added, "though he understands if you refuse." I closed the folder, emotions too tangled to unravel in the moment. "I need time to review these with my attorney." "Of course." She stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, Mrs. Wilson, in my experience, people facing serious criminal charges rarely show this level of concern for those they've hurt. Make of that what you will." After she departed, I sat alone with the documents, tracing Nathan's signature with my fingertip. The man who had lived a double life, who had been prepared to frame me for his crimes, was now surrendering everything to secure my future. People were rarely entirely good or entirely evil, I reflected. Even Nathan, with all his calculated deceptions, contained contradictions, capable of profound betrayal and, apparently, genuine remorse. That evening I called Rachel Goldman, who had been managing my legal affairs remotely while I remained in protective custody. "The settlement terms are extraordinarily favorable," she confirmed after I outlined the contents. "Better than anything we could have achieved through contested proceedings. So you think I should accept?" "From a purely legal standpoint, absolutely. It secures your financial future and Lily's, without years of litigation." Rachel paused. "The personal aspect, whether to grant Nathan this meeting, this chance at what he might see as redemption, that's entirely your decision." After our call ended, I walked the facility's gardens in the fading light, one hand resting on my belly where Lily shifted rhythmically. The question of Nathan's requested meeting weighed heavily, not just whether to go, but what it might mean, what closure it might offer or deny. In the end, the decision crystallized not around what Nathan deserved, but what I needed: the chance to look him in the eye one final time, to speak my truth without manipulation or crisis intervening. The next morning, I informed Agent Keller of my decision. Arrangements were made for a supervised meeting at the hospital where Nathan remained under guard, his bail having been revoked after Harrington's arrest revealed the extent of the conspiracy. Vanessa hugged me before I left. "Whatever he says, remember who you are now, not just who you were in his story." The wisdom in her words stayed with me during the drive back to Oakwood, the autumn landscape a blur of crimson and gold outside the SUV's tinted windows. Nathan looked smaller somehow in the hospital room, diminished not just by the institutional setting, but by the weight of consequences finally settling upon him. His expression when I entered was a complex mixture of relief, shame, and something that might have been love once. "Emily," he said, voice catching slightly. "Thank you for coming." I sat in the visitor's chair, maintaining distance between us. "You wanted to talk. I'm here." He nodded, accepting the emotional boundary I'd established. "I've signed everything: the divorce, the property transfers, the cooperation agreements. You'll have financial security, whatever happens to me. So I've been told." Nathan shifted, uncomfortably under my direct gaze. "It's not enough. Nothing would be. But it's what I can do now." "Why, Nathan?" The question emerged softer than I'd intended. Not just the affair or the fraud, but all of it. The elaborate deceptions, the multiple lives. What were you looking for? He was silent for a long moment, seeming to search for honesty after so many lies. "I don't have a simple answer. At first it was about proving something, that I could succeed where my father had failed, build something lasting." "Your father's bankruptcy," I said, remembering how that childhood trauma had shaped him. "Yes, but success wasn't enough. Each achievement just raised the bar for the next one. I needed more deals, more money, more validation." His gaze dropped to his hands. Vanessa represented something different, a chance to be admired for qualities you'd stopped seeing years ago. "That's not fair," I protested. "I never stopped." "I know," he interrupted gently. "The failure was mine, not yours. You saw me clearly, perhaps too clearly. I couldn't hide my flaws from you the way I could from others." The honesty in his words disarmed me slightly. This was not the practiced charm of the old Nathan, but something more vulnerable. And the corruption? Working with Harrington? Nathan sighed, rubbing his face wearily. Another slippery slope. Small favors at first. Information exchanged, introductions made. Then larger compromises, each justified as necessary for business, for our future. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. I didn't set out to become the person I became, Emily. It happened in increments, each step seemingly justifiable in isolation. Until suddenly you were maintaining two families and facilitating civic corruption, I observed, keeping my tone neutral despite the pain his choices had caused. Yes. He accepted the characterization without defense. By the time I realized how far I'd strayed, I was in too deep. So I started documenting everything. Insurance, I told myself. Protection against Harrington and the others if things went wrong. They did go wrong, I pointed out. Spectacularly. So, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. Not how I anticipated, certainly. You were magnificent at the baby shower. Terrifying, but magnificent. The compliment, unexpected and seemingly genuine, caught me off guard. I was just trying to protect myself. Lily, our future. And you did. Nathan's expression grew serious again. I want you to know something, Emily. Whatever lies I told, whatever personas I created, what we had was real. My love for you, my excitement about Lily, that wasn't fabricated. I studied him, searching for the manipulations I'd grown to expect. Instead, I saw only exhaustion and regret. The problem, Nathan, is that I'll never know where the truth ended and the deception began. That uncertainty, that's your legacy to our relationship. He nodded, accepting this hard truth. I understand. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Emily. Or reconciliation. I just wanted a chance to tell you that I'm sorry, without qualifications or excuses, and to assure you that I'll do everything possible to make Harrington and the others face justice, to keep you safe from whatever fallout comes. Why include me in your dead man's switch? I asked, the question that had puzzled me since learning of the security system. Why trust me with that power when you were preparing to frame me if necessary? Nathan's expression softened. Because, despite everything, despite my contingency plans and paranoia, some part of me always knew you were the one person I could trust when things fell apart completely. The frame-up files were a desperate backup plan I hoped never to use. The biometric access was faith, I suppose. Faith in your fundamental decency, even toward someone who had betrayed you. The irony wasn't lost on me, that in the midst of elaborate betrayals, Nathan had still anchored his final safety measure in trust of my character. What happens now? I asked, gesturing toward his hospital room, the guard outside. Legally? I'll keep cooperating, provide testimony against Harrington and the others. With the plea agreement, I'm looking at 5 to 7 years, possibly less with good behavior. He stated this without self-pity, matter-of-factly. After that, I don't know. Start over somewhere, try to be a better man. And Lily? The question that mattered most to me now. Nathan hesitated. That's entirely up to you, Emily. I've surrendered all parental rights in the divorce agreement as you requested. But I've established funds for her future, education, whatever she needs. If someday, when she's older, you decide to tell her about me, I'll be available. On whatever terms you set. The conversation had taken an unexpected turn toward practicality, toward future considerations I hadn't yet fully processed. I don't know what I'll tell her, I admitted. I want to protect her from pain, but I don't want to build her life on lies. You'll find the right way, Nathan said with surprising confidence. You always do. A nurse appeared at the door, signaling that our time was ending. I stood, one hand automatically supporting my lower back as Lily shifted inside me. May I? Nathan asked hesitantly, eyes on my pregnant belly. The request was deeply personal, crossing boundaries I'd established since discovering his betrayal. Yet something in his expression, a genuine longing to connect with the daughter he might never know, softened my resolve. I nodded, allowing him to place his hand gently against the swell where our daughter grew. As if on cue, Lily delivered, a forceful kick against his palm. Nathan's eyes widened, a smile of wonder breaking through his careful composure. She's strong. Yes, I agreed, stepping back after that brief connection. She is. Like her mother, he added quietly. I gathered my purse, preparing to leave. Goodbye, Nathan. Goodbye, Emily. He remained seated, making no move to prolong the moment. Thank you. For coming. For listening. For... He gestured vaguely, encompassing everything unsaid between us. At the door, I paused, turning back with one final question. Was any of it real? Us, I mean. Nathan met my gaze steadily. The most real thing in my life. I just didn't realize it until it was gone. I nodded once, accepting this final truth, then walked away from the man who had been my husband, my betrayer, and now, simply part of my past. In the corridor, Detective Reyes waited, her quiet presence a comfort after the emotional intensity of the meeting. Okay? She asked simply. I will be, I replied, surprised to discover I meant it. 6 months later, I stood on the bluff overlooking the lake, Lily sleeping peacefully in her carrier against my chest. The spring air carried the scent of new growth, of possibilities unfolding after winter's hardship. The lakeside property, Nathan's final gift to our daughter, stretched around us. 10 acres of pristine shoreline, now mine alone. The construction crew had just broken ground on the modest house I'd designed, a fresh start built on my terms, not echoes of Nathan's grandiose plans. It's perfect, Jessica said, joining me at the edge of the bluff. Close enough to the gallery for your commute, but away from all the Oakwood drama. That was the idea, I agreed, smiling as Lily stirred against me, her tiny hand curling around my finger. The past 6 months had brought seismic changes. Lily's birth, the sale of the Victorian house too haunted by memories, the finalization of my divorce, the ongoing prosecutions of Harrington and his co-conspirators for corruption that had shocked even cynical Oakwood residents. Nathan had received his sentence, 6 years with possibility of parole after 4, his cooperation reducing what might have been a much longer term. He sent a card when Lily was born, but respected my request for distance as I established our new life. Vanessa called yesterday, I told Jessica as we walked the property perimeter. Tom is thriving. She started a design business in Chicago. Are you going to accept her invitation? Jessica asked. For the boys to meet? I nodded, watching a pair of eagles circle above the lake. They're siblings, regardless of how they came to be. I don't want to punish them for their father's choices. The decision hadn't come easily, evolving through months of therapy and reflection. But ultimately, I'd concluded that Lily deserved to know her half-brother, to have that connection preserved despite the complicated circumstances of their births. You know what amazes me, Jessica said as we headed back toward the cars. How you've managed to create something beautiful from such chaos. This property, your new position at the gallery, your relationship with Vanessa, you've transformed pain into possibility. I adjusted Lily's blanket against the spring breeze, gazing down at her peaceful face, features that sometimes echoed Nathan's but were increasingly her own unique blend. I had to, I said simply. For her. For myself. Staying bitter wasn't an option. As the construction foreman approached with questions about the foundation placement, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had led me here. From that devastating baby shower revelation to this moment of rebuilding. Nathan's betrayal had shattered the life I thought I'd have, exposed corruption I never suspected, and forced me to confront painful truths. Yet from those broken pieces, I'd constructed something stronger, more authentic than what had existed before. Later that night, with Lily sleeping in her crib beside my temporary apartment bed, I began drafting an email I'd been contemplating for weeks. Not to Nathan, our communication remained structured through attorneys, but to Detective Reyes, who had become an unexpected friend through the ordeal. "I'm breaking ground on the lake house," I wrote. "Simple design, plenty of windows facing the water. Room enough for me and Lily, with space for guests. Maybe once you wrap up the Harrington. Case, you could come for the housewarming?" As I hit send, I realized I was smiling. A genuine smile unfettered by the shadows that had followed me since that fateful day when my perfect life unraveled. The future stretching before me wasn't what I'd planned or expected, but it was undeniably mine, shaped by choices made in clarity rather than deception. Outside my window, the lights of Oakwood sparkled against the night sky, the city itself transformed by the exposure of corruption that had festered beneath its polished surface. Like me, it was rebuilding. Painfully, imperfectly, but with renewed integrity. I checked on Lily one final time, my heart swelling with love for this perfect, innocent being who had been my anchor through turbulent waters. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, mother and daughter, forging our own story from the fragments of what came before. The deed Nathan had signed over, the tangible property now taking shape as our new home, was more than a piece of land or legal document. It represented the foundation of our future, built not on appearances or deceptions, but on solid ground of truth hard-won. As I drifted toward sleep, I thought not of what I'd lost, but of what I'd gained. Strength I never knew I possessed, clarity born of painful revelation, and the precious gift of beginning again. The baby shower where everything had fallen apart now seemed like a distant memory, the necessary breaking that had preceded this unexpected, authentic rebuilding. The final deed Nathan had surrendered wasn't just the lakefront property, but the freedom to write my own story, on my own terms, with my daughter by my side. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.